Don't let mosquitoes ruin your day. Fight the bite by removing standing water on your property. Standing water of any kind is a breeding ground for mosquitoes. Do your part and help reduce the mosquito population. For more tips and tricks, visit hcflgov.net/fightthebite.
Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting of the Environmental Protection Commission to order. Commissioner White will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and the invocation. Good morning, Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask everyone to please stand. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, I pray that you will guide this board, our staff and stakeholders this morning as we make important decisions for a clean, healthy environment. Lord, I pray for our executive director, Janet Doherty, in the wake of her loss, and pray for continued healing for her and her family. Also, Lord, I thank you for allowing us to be in a country where we are able to petition our local elected representatives, and I'm thankful for this audience here today that is here to petition us, and hope that you will open our hearts and minds and help us to hear them. As always, I pray for our first responders and members of our armed forces, that you'll guide them and keep them safe each and every day. And I ask for these blessings and give these thanks in your heavenly name. Amen.
Amen. And thank you, Commissioner White, for mentioning our EPC director and her loss. Our hearts are with her. Commissioner White, you're recognized.
Thank you, and my apologies for using Janet's maiden name versus her married name, but I'm sure we all sincerely send our thoughts and prayers her way. Madam Chair, it's my understanding that we have about 100 speakers signed up to speak to the board today, and of course there are multiple ways to petition this board. I know that I've laid eyes on perhaps hundreds of emails from the folks here in the audience today. I know our customary practice is to allow 3 minutes per speaker. Typically at the BOCC meetings, we have 45 minutes carved out in the morning, and then we'll hear additional speakers in the afternoon. I would wonder if there's an appetite to maybe lower the amount of time so that we can hear as many speakers as possible this morning. I know we have gone as low as a minute in the past, but I know there's a feeling that that's probably not quite enough. So I would, well, before I make a motion, I would just like to ask the audience to just please make every attempt to keep your comments as brief as possible so that we can hear from as many of you as possible, and to consider designating various leaders from within the group, maybe to speak on behalf of multiple people. But with that said, I will make a motion to set the time per speaker at 2 minutes so that we can hear from as many of these folks as possible.
Second. Thank you. And so we have a motion by Commissioner White, second by Commissioner Myers, to take public comment in that time for 2 minutes per speaker. And I have a comment from Commissioner Kemp.
I was just going to agree with that and say it was I would never support 1 minute, but 2 minutes gives people reasonable time to say, and we have a big crowd, so I'd like to hear from as many people as possible.
Now, we have not taken roll call for attendance, but since we're all here, I don't think that's necessary. So we can just indicate our, Commissioner Overman, you're recognized.
For those of you that may not have participated in this process before, that does limit you to 2 minutes. But if you have someone in your circle of friends and advocates that you know will speak well, you can provide your name and donate your time to that person. No? Mm-hmm. No? So, okay, so we're not going to do that. Right. Okay, all right, never mind.
All right. Motion on the floor. Please indicate your vote.
Commissioner Kemp?
Yes.
All right. Did you?
We're taking the votes by the tablet machine. Mm-hmm.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may have the floor one more time, I need to step into my office for just a moment. There are speakers in the offices, and I'll be right back, but I'll be able to hear everything that's being said until I get back.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. So, moving to Ms. DeLu, is there any changes to the agenda? No changes. Thank you. And we do have a recognition this morning before we move to public comment. So I'll give that to Ms. DeLu.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. We are honored to introduce Margaret Hager-Shreves, who's been with EPC for 24 years, and give her this recognition. Our Executive Director, Janet Lorton, definitely wanted me to convey the impact she has had on our agency and to the Wetlands Division. So I'm going to turn it over to Sterling Woodard for the dedication.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is Sterling Woodard, EPC, Wetlands Division. I just wanted to bring up this slide, if everyone can see it. It is Margaret. She's worked with us for almost 24 years, a little over 24 years, and actually came to us in 1998 from the defense contractor industry. And one of the things that she did is she brought a lot of her expertise and her ability to get along with people with her. She started out as an engineering tech 2, and she's going to retire as a senior program coordinator. And what that is she did everything that there was necessary to do to keep the Wetlands Division functioning by working with the managers, the engineers, the scientists, and everyone. Whatever job or whatever task was necessary, Margaret stepped up to it and did what was needed to be done. So we are going to miss her. She is a breath of fresh air. She's an outstanding employee. But even though it's going to be our loss, it's going to be her family's loss. I mean, her family's gain, because she's going to be retiring and taking care of them. But what she does love is she loves breakfast sandwiches, Cuban breakfast sandwiches, and con leche. So anytime we have a breakfast luncheon or anything like that, we're going to make sure that we can lure her back by having her favorite sandwiches and con leches. So we just want to thank her for all the years of hard work that she has. And because of that, she's going to be receiving the agency's Lifetime Achievement Award. And the award reads, in recognition of a lifetime of dedicated service to the citizens of Hillsborough County and protection of our local natural resources. Best wishes from the EPC family. So we just want to say, Margaret, we love you. And if you can you come up? He's actually in the office. There you go. All right. Would you like to say anything?
I would like to say thank you, Sterling. Thank you, Elaine. My heart and my prayers are Director Janet. And I'm not one for a lot of words, but EPC has become my family, and I will miss them. I enjoyed working here, and I just appreciate everything of the kind words that Sterling has just said, and God bless everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margaret. We love you too.
Well, thank you very much. And I know I speak for the whole board here on the Environmental Protection Commission when I thank you for your years of service, your lifetime of achievement to the EPC. Our Wetlands Division is so important to protecting our critical wetlands in Hillsborough County. We're very fortunate to have an Environmental Protection Commission right here in our own county, close to our natural resources, and able to keep eyes on our natural resources with very accomplished and professional scientists monitoring our wetlands and ensuring that they are not overrun by development. Most counties do not have this luxury, and we're very much indebted to the fine people in the Wetlands Division, including Ms. Margaret Hager-Shreves. And so we wish you well in your next chapter. Ms. DeLu, anything else?
No, thank you.
All right. Well, That will now take us to public comment, and we have settled that the speakers will be getting 2 minutes. But before we move to, well, I am going to read a little bit of something about the rules first. So the EPC Commission welcomes comments from citizens about any issue or concern. Your opinions and input to the Commission are valued. However, it is requested at the same time, when you address the Commission, that comments are not directed personally against a commissioner or staff member, but rather directed at the issues. And this provides a mutual respect between the Commission and the public. The Commission has set aside a 45-minute period in the morning, immediately following recognitions, for public comments. At the discretion of the chair, the Commission may again hear public comments at the end of the meeting. The chair will call on speakers by name in the order in which their requests to speak have been received, no matter if virtual or in person. The boardroom is available for those wishing to speak. The first 35 in-person signups will be seated in the boardroom for public comment. And I understand we've also had room this morning for some of the people who just want to watch and not speak in the boardroom. Face coverings are strongly encouraged in the boardroom, though not required. Additional viewing of this meeting is in the first floor lobby area. All virtual speakers will be muted upon joining the meeting and will be unmuted after being recognized by the chair by name. So we have a big agenda this morning, and we have it decided that the speakers will be taken in order at 2 minutes each. But before we move to the public comment, I'm going to invite our state senator, Janet Cruz, to the podium to say a few words before that 45-minute clock starts ticking for the public.
Thank you. No? How about now? Very good. Good morning, everyone. With your permission, may I put this on the overhead?
Yeah, we see it.
So let me just start by saying thank you for giving me the time to be here today. It's an honor and a pleasure to see many of my friends that are here. And I represent District 18, which is currently District 18, and Lutz is in my district, starting from MacDill Air Force Base all the way over, almost 500,000 folks in my district. And I'm here to testify honestly in opposition to this petition for the air curtain incinerator. And I do that because you look back at these residents who received notice of this meeting only 2 days ago, and this is what's here. Once more residents see what's happening, I think that you will see an army of folks here. Their chief concern, of course, and mine as well, is the adverse health effect and the studies that we found from air curtain incinerators to have on residents that live nearby. And I say that because this is the proposed site for the incinerator. Okay. So this is the proposed site for the incinerator. You can see the senior living facility here. Right here is Idlewild, and if you've ever been out to Idlewild, you will see that there is a huge youth program that takes place outside in the area of the Idlewild, and this is an open sports field. This is a big school. The lake is here, but you can see that what's been chosen to what's happening here is an incinerator in the midst of a densely populated area, specifically an area where people spend a lot of time outdoors. Children are out in these facilities after school care. Idlewild Church has a cross-country program that's very popular. There's a lot happening there, and according to a report from the British Society of Ecological Medicine, several studies have shown higher rates of adult and childhood cancer, deaths from childhood cancer in areas that are near waste incinerators. And these incinerators emit chemicals And these chemicals, which can include formaldehyde, and they can enter the community's food chain. And perhaps we don't live in Lutz, but these folks do. And I beg you, in their 2 minutes that they have to talk with you, that you listen to the way that this was done. And it was done through it administratively, rather than follow what I call or would assume are the proper channels. So I question the process. I also question the judgment of someone who would want to put, it's not just one incinerator, but it's two, in an area that is densely populated. And originally, you know, people thought that they were going to build a suburb there, but they've been quietly clearing the land and preparing for this. And the residents had no idea until last Wednesday, I think. So they're flabbergasted, they are disappointed, and I want to conclude my remarks by pointing out that the area surrounding, it's within a, really honestly, within a stone's throw of the playing fields. My mom is in a nursing home in Lutz. These folks are very worried, as am I. All I'm asking for today is to pause and let these folks fully understand what's happening. Let's do open and honest government, and let's let these folks express their concerns for their families and the place that they live. They deserve that right, and they deserve to feel like they live in a healthy Hillsborough County. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Senator Cruz. And before we move on to public comment, I just want to make very clear that on our agenda today, this item that you just spoke about, by the way, I'm guessing that we all share, I certainly share the concerns that you were raising. But today is not a public hearing that is going to decide that permit. Today is taking a report from staff about where we are with that, and then what are the next steps. There will be another public hearing, public meeting to take more public comment. This is a lengthy process, and we will certainly be looking at several issues, and our staffs will be looking at several issues regarding the eventual permitting application as to whether or not this will be allowed. So we are quite a ways from that. We are just reviewing the process today. Commissioner Hagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the commissioner that added this to the agenda, I just want everyone here to know that after we hear the report, I'm going to make comments, and I do intend on making a motion that would potentially impact the process moving forward. So I just want everyone here to know that. I don't know if they're going to be allowed to stay here or not. I know yesterday we made everyone leave or go downstairs, so I don't know if they can stay here or not. So I just want everyone here to know that I plan on taking direction, and so we'll see what transpires in here in a couple hours.
Right, and so, and I've been informed that today is the first day we are having people stay in the boardroom. So anybody can stay for that item as they wish. And so now we'll move to public comment, starting with Mr. Lynn Robinson, who is virtual. And we'll have 2 minutes. Mr. Robinson, are you available?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, good morning, commissioners. My name is Lynn Robinson. I'm a licensed professional engineer in Florida, and I reside in Hillsborough County. I'm employed with Montrose Environmental, which has offices in Atlanta and the headquarters in North Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm speaking today on agenda item 9C, regarding the air curtain incinerator. As the engineer for the application, I'm speaking on behalf of Louis Gerasi, LLP. And I'm just making technical comments today. Just to update the commissioners, this application was received by EPC on June 3rd based on initial plans, and contain conservative numbers on the amount of wood to be burned annually, estimates of air emissions, and requested operating hours. The application proposed a maximum to burn a maximum of 25,000 tons of wood comprised of yard trash and clean land clearing debris, basically wood, using an air curtain incinerator unit technology. And it did say up to 2 units, and the plan is to install 1 unit, and then after some time, perhaps install a second one. That was to give flexibility in operation, not to increase the amount of wood burned. We still ask for 25,000 tons. Based on discussions with EPC Air Division staff, we've reviewed details with them, operations, and so we've clarified the application. We submitted amendments last night, actually, so they're reviewing them today. So the EPC staff requires more restrictive operation, and so they're limiting the amount of wood burn to 22,000 tons per year. This is not a major source of
Mr. Robinson,
emissions.
your time is up. But I would like to ask you one question, since you are the engineer for the applicant. Did you say any of this,
speaking, please?
Mr. Robinson? Did you say any of this on the record at the zoning application for the Jurassi's?
No, this is not involved in that. This is just EPC environmental permit.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you.
And who's asking the question?
This is the Mariella Smith. All right, your time is up, and we'll move to our next speaker, Mr. Ryan Menendez, who is also virtual.
Madam Chair, Ryan Menendez did not sign in.
Thank you. Mr. David Grimonpre.
Hello, this is David. Can you hear me?
Yes. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is David Grimonpre. I live in the promenade at Lake Park, and I am just over hello, my name is David Grimonpre. I live in the promenade at Lake Park, and I live just over a half-mile away from the spot where the air curtain incinerator will be located. I personally have asthma, and my son also has some respiratory issues, and so we're very concerned about the air curtain incineration units that are going in. I am a PhD chemical engineer, and I work in the area of incineration, and I do it for hazardous materials. So I know very well all the chemicals that are formed during the combustion and the incineration of this yard trash. And I understand that what gets produced is nitrous oxides, sulfur oxides, hazardous air pollutants, the dioxins, the furans. And one of the most dangerous items that is going to be produced from this will be the small particulates. And these are small enough that they will become respiratory issues in that they're small enough to go into your lungs and absorbed into the body. And on top of that, if any of the materials that are planned to be burned are treated lumber or yard waste that's got any herbicides or pesticides, the products that are produced will have, they're very toxic, extremely toxic, and those are the cancer-causing chemicals. And even though these air curtains are somewhat better than burning the materials in the open, they still will emit all of these chemicals that I've talked about and be released into the nearby environment. We'll be able to smell them during the day. We'll be able to see the smoke. It'll be in our neighborhoods. I also have a father-in-law that's in a local nursing home, and although he's not in the one next door, there is a nursing home right next door to where this location is going to be. Angels is a nursing home that have over 210 residents once they're full with their new extension.
Thank you, Mr. Grimonpre. I'm sorry, but your time is up. Thank you very much. Mr. Jeffrey Grimm is our next speaker, and he is joining us virtually. You have 2 minutes.
Jeffrey did not sign into the meeting.
Thank you. Ms. Carmen Edmonds is our next speaker virtually. Ms. Carmen Edwards, you have 2 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Carmen Edmonds. I'm a precinct committee woman in precinct 538 in Commissioner Hagan's district. I live in the Calusa Trace neighborhood. I reached out several months ago over my concerns with adding 200 plus homes in this area of Loop. I never heard anything back. Adding 200 homes alone along Idlewild Drive will create problems. Added cars and pollution, no infrastructure being addressed. It's a 2-lane road and overcrowded schools already. I've been following the BOCC issues for over a year now. This is typical behavior all around our county. Build, build, build with no regard for infrastructure and the environment or its residents, which is ironic coming from a board who is trying to push green initiatives with transportation down our throats. But now to learn you are considering allowing a yard waste incinerator in the middle of a densely populated community is very disappointing and very frustrating. There are so many health concerns that are not being addressed, and I really hope you all have ears to hear today to address it, to hear our concerns, and to know we're worried for our safety, for our children's health, and for the elderly population that lives around this area. Please do not allow this to happen. We are begging you. This is a huge, huge concern for this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brian Flynn is our next speaker, virtually.
Yes. Good morning. My name is Brian Flynn. I reside with my family at 2608 Wilson Circle, and I'm the Vice President of the Wilson Lakes Neighborhood Association. I'm gravely concerned about the effect this facility will have on my family and my neighborhood's health. We talked a little bit before about the combined emissions. All of these contribute to acid rain, smog, are known carcinogens, and I don't understand how an application like this isn't immediately rejected when the project is adjacent to the public potable water supply in the well protection zone number 2. The majority of the residents to the north and east of this are also on well water. This is a public water supply area, and this application is considering allowing amount of toxic material to fall back down to earth within this well protection zone and have the ash wash directly into wetlands and waters connected to the aquifer that we drink from. The materials are referred to as yard trash, land clearing wood, tree branches, and logs, and etc. What else does etc. cover? Construction debris, pressure-treated wood, and other debris from land clearing activities. This subject property has been used for hunting and shooting for decades. How much lead is embedded in the wood and other materials will be put through these incinerators from clearing just the adjacent property alone, not to mention if other materials allowed to come from off-site? What is the operating noise level for both the single and double air curtain incinerators? At startup, normal operating procedures, and shutdown, are these levels in accordance with the residential neighborhood? Has noise modeling been considered or performed for this facility? Is it sited a proper distance away from the school, the church, and other residences? How can the county guarantee that only yard trash are being placed in the incinerator? Will there be regular inspections?
Thank you,
by
Mr.
the
Flynn.
county?
I'm sorry, but your time is up. Thank you very much. Mr. Robert King, in person. Is there a Robert King here to speak? And I'm not seeing him. Is he virtual?
Robert King did not sign in virtually.
Mr. Rick Fernandez, you're next. Virtually, Rick Fernandez.
Yes, Chair, this is Rick Fernandez. Can you hear me?
Yes, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you, and good morning. I was here to donate time to Candace Savitz. I understand from the ruling at the bench that that is not to be permitted. Is that correct?
Correct. Everybody gets 2 minutes this morning.
All right, I'm going to try to be extemporaneous here. As said, I was here to donate time to Candace. She's been our point person in Tampa Heights regarding issues having to do with pollution emanating from construction work on Interstate 275. It's your agenda item 9B. The construction work we're talking about primarily is jackhammering that has produced plumes of dust that we are concerned contain lead. The ask is, and other particulate matters that may well be harmful to the surrounding public. The ask is to conduct ongoing air quality analysis and mitigation as necessary contemporaneous with that work. This issue has been presented to most of you at the TPO board last week. I'll incorporate those comments by reference as made by Ms. Savitz at that time. I also incorporate many of the health concerns voiced by the Lutz residents. I've heard some this morning. I can anticipate what the rest will be. Those concerns are virtually identical to ours in the urban core. It may be a different pollution factory, but it's exactly the same results. Concerns about pulmonary injuries, childhood illnesses, asthma, cancer, COPD, etc. All those same issues are relatable to what we experience here in the Heights, secondary to the interstate infrastructure writ large, and now secondary to the work that we're experiencing on a daily basis as a result of the 275 capacity project. Whatever time I have left, I'll cede back to the good people of Lutz, and I understand Candace is behind me somewhere in the queue. So God bless her, and thank you so much.
Inside your 2 minutes. Mr. Jeff Garreau, virtually.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, and thank you to the chair and to the board members for giving me this opportunity to speak. First off, I am a retired senior enlisted United States Air Force, and due to a lot of travel into Southeast Asia, I myself, and I'm not the only one that has COPD and other health issues. But I represent Casa de Lago Homeowners Association, which is right off of Crooked Lane. Our subdivision is located 0.8 miles from the proposed location to construct 2 air curtain incinerators located at Jurassic Road. Our members are deeply concerned over the possibility of having this facility located so close to our community. An air pollution source like this should not be constructed near residential homes, senior living facilities, churches, outdoor sporting facilities, schools, and of course we have St. Joseph's North Hospital not that far away. The proposed location of the incinerator is less than 2 miles from all these venues, some of them right across the street. These air curtain incinerators will not only diminish the air quality in our community, but this burn operation will create noise from heavy machinery necessary to operate the facility, heavy truck traffic in and out of the facility, all of which could take place 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Having a process like this in a residential neighborhood will not only be a nuisance, but it will also most assuredly drive down property values. On behalf of our association, I am asking that you passionately oppose this project and see that the air permit and any other necessary permits being denied, ensuring that our beautiful community and its residents will not be negatively impacted by an operation so ill-matched for the area.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you very much. Michelle King, in person, is there Michelle King who wished to speak? I'm not seeing Michelle King here. Candace Savitz, virtually.
I'm here.
Good morning, Ms.
I'm
Savitz.
here.
You have 2 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Candace Savitz. I'm a Tampa Heights resident. I'm here this morning to ask the EPC to test the materials at the 275 construction site. We know that there's toxic lead dust being created. We need you to step up and test it so that we all have good air quality. And I do feel for the people in Lutz. From the Texas Department State Health Services regarding lead, quote, how long do lead particles stay in the air? These dust particles can stay for up to 10 hours. I think it's important to point this out because once jackhammering has been completed that day, there's still a risk to the people. Also, from the CDC, it does not, this is from the CDC, it does not matter if a person breathes in, swallows, or absorbs lead particles, the health effects are the same. However, the body absorbs higher levels of lead when it is breathed in.
What is happening down here in Tampa Heights and Seminole Heights, close to schools and churches and playgrounds and stuff, is the toxic lead-filled dust from the old materials that are being hammered and concrete breaking, and it's creating this dust. And in a May 30th letter from FDOT, it says, while no testing has been done on our project, all concrete dust contains silica. They said in writing that they did not test this construction site. And yet they said in another thing that, oh, they did, they tested everything. So we need the EPC to referee, come in, help us get these testing done, maybe even point us in the direction where the residents can get lead, personal lead tests so that they can see if they've been exposed.
Thank you very much. That's your buzzer. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Linz Pratt, virtually.
Ms. Pratt did not sign into the meeting.
Next is Brian Delaney, in person. Brian Delaney. I see nobody rising here. Are we sure that that's the third in person who has?
Well, commissioners, they were able to sign up 2 days ago. So some of these may have signed up and selected in person and then just not able to make it.
Great. Ms. Mitchell Hip, virtually.
Mitchell did not sign into the meeting as well.
Okay. Joe Greco, virtually.
Joe, go ahead.
Good morning, Board. Good morning, Board. My name is Joe Greco, and I was honored to be appointed by the Board of County Commissioners to serve on the Code Enforcement Board for over 10 years. We ruled on thousands of cases, and this project is reminiscent of an applicant asking for community forgiveness instead of permission. Again, for the adverse health effects stated by Senator Cruz and others, I oppose this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Greco. Ketan Gohill, virtually.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Ketan Go. Good morning, thank you. I'm a resident of the Promenade at Lake Park Community, and it's just over half a mile from where the incinerator will be located. In fact, my backyard, there is the senior center just behind my backyard, and then after that, the incinerator. I've lived here 5 years now with my wife and 2 daughters, and I have personal concerns about this incinerator, as everybody so far has had. Inevitably, what remedies will we have with the illnesses that will hit our community, our elderly that live nearby, as well as our young? What will happen with our property values? Will we be reimbursed for the inevitable drop in our property values? I don't think so. This is the one point at which we have the ability to have a voice and to stop this from moving forward. Now, I recognize the statements by the planning engineer that the operating hours and the amount of yard waste burned will be regulated, but we have no guarantees that this will be monitored and enforced, nor do we have any guarantees as to what will be burned in there will be monitored and strictly restricted. As with every resident in our community, I'm vehemently against this proposed project, and I will be keeping an eye on the way that our elected officials vote on this matter, and I will personally campaign against any elected official who is supportive of this project. Thank you very much, and I cede my time to my fellow community members.
Thank you, Mr. Gohill. Robin Eaton, virtual speaker.
Good morning. Are you able to hear me?
Yes. You have 2 minutes. Welcome.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you for hearing our concerns. My husband and I have lived in Tampa for 20 years, and when we were purchasing our home in 2016, we chose the community of Lutz because of its quaint rural prominence. This is a family community that is built around schools, churches, parks, and ball fields, and residential shelter, as you have heard from many of our fellow community members. It is designed to draw children and families outside, both to play and to live. And as one of the more than 25,000 individuals that resides in this community of Lutz, I have great opposition to the placement of this air incinerator in the middle of this residential community. My neighborhood was constructed when the Gerasi family sold their plot of land in Lutz, a community where this family grew up. this very neighborhood in which his elder, Pearl Gerasi, lived in her home until her passing in 2018. It is very disappointing that now the Gerasi family wants to put this application project on our land. So we ask you as the Environmental Protection Committee to do just that, to protect us from the pollutant and the air and health risks that this will pose on not only us, but our elders, our children, and many generations to come. There has to be land in Hillsborough County that is much more suitable for this. And I urge you as a healthcare professional myself, both my husband and I are in the medical field and he works in oncology. We understand the risk that this poses, and we do not want to expose our families to this. This is not why we purchased a home in the promenade at Luke's. We ask you to oppose this, and I don't understand why the land is being cleared if this application has not been approved. So we ask that you're following proper channels in getting this taken care of, and that there are strict regulations on this project, but that it does not have any place in our community around our children and our homes. Thank you for hearing this.
Thank you. Mr. Jim Fetterman is the next speaker. Mr. Jim Fetterman signed up for virtual. Is he online?
Jim did not sign into the meeting.
Thank you. Brent Gordon is in person today. Good morning, Mr. Gordon. You have 2 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Brent Gordon. My wife and our 2 young children live about 750 feet away from the proposed incinerator site. In our house, we have asthma, eczema, and allergies. Now, a lot of people are going to talk about all the different things and all the different locations by this incinerator, so I will move on and ask questions, because this is supposed to be informational today, correct? So the questions I want to ask are about the incinerator itself and all the plans surrounding it that we don't yet know. Some of these questions are broader than the air permit application, but these answers are important to understanding the scope of this entire project. First, what is the purpose of this project, and why is it being proposed at all, or now? Why here? Why does this project have to be in this residential area of our neighborhood? Does this have anything to do with the development of land and construction of the Lennar project that is adjacent to this property? Who are these incinerators for the benefit of? Where would the material for these incinerators come from? What is the plan for the materials that would be accepted for these incinerators? How can they guarantee that only legally proper material is burned? How could they prevent material that could be proper but may not be, such as treated lumber, from being burned? Since the requested permit would allow for continuous operations 24/7, 365 days a year, what is the plan and who will be paying for security and operators for such continuous use? What is the plan for securing the property itself? What is the plan to prevent runoff from these incinerators to be going into the water table? How can they predict emissions if they don't know what will be burned? How loud will these machines run? How often will trucks be coming by? How long can after starting up these incinerators, will the burn go before the air curtains are in operation, and how will they do the pollution? While there are many more questions to be asked, there are some simple truths at the end of this discussion. If these incinerators are installed, air quality and property values will go down. Even maybe a little, maybe a lot, but they will go down. So I ask this commission to ask the tough questions and use whatever discretion you can to protect the residents of this community.
Thank you very much for your questions. They are good questions, and we'll be looking at those. Miss Jacqueline Rodriguez, who's virtual.
Jacqueline did not sign into the meeting.
Thank you. Jesse Rodriguez.
Jesse did not as well.
And Jen Messer, in person. Is there a Jen Messer?
Yes, thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Messer. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Jen Messer, and I live just 3/4 of a mile away from where the proposed air incinerators will be placed. I'm speaking out in grave opposition of this project. This is an ill-thought-out plan that was not taken into account the health, safety, and well-being of the residents of this community and beyond. Nor were we informed of the potential hazards in an appropriate amount of time. We are talking about children who go to the Sun Lake Academy where the land backs up to, where smoke and embers could spill into their play areas, creating health risks for them now and in the future, not to mention the 10+ other schools within a 5-mile radius. the seniors who live at the assisted living facility across the street who survived COVID only to have a lung-destroying facility placed across the street and will no longer be able to enjoy fresh air outdoors. The wildlife that is protected in the area who will migrate or die due to the toxicity in the air and carcinogens covering their homes. The residents in the surrounding counties, because our lakes feed the Florida aquifers, and those will become polluted. You realize we pump water into the Pinellas County area from these lakes, and so now you're not only poisoning Lutz, but we're also poisoning other counties too. I have questions, as do all of our residents, and I want answers. What studies have been done locally to determine the impacts and how these incinerators will work under our erratic weather conditions at different times of year? What traffic studies have been done? Can we handle the added traffic on our state and county roads? Is it safe to have all these extra dump trucks hauling waste through our communities where kids stand on the streets waiting for the bus every morning, just outside my neighborhood to get to the very light that I go drop my son off at daycare every day? Who decided this was appropriate to put a facility like this? And has there been research to show that these incinerators are safe in a suburban neighborhood? Have you driven the area lately? It is not rural, it is not industrial. What happens if there is a safety issue or a fire or something goes terribly wrong? Can we live with ourselves knowing we put the well-beings of hundreds of thousands of children, seniors, and residents
Ms.
at
Messer.
risk?
Your time is up. Thank you very much for coming to speak to us. We need to keep things rolling so we can hear from as many people as possible. So try not to interrupt, please. Mr. Todd Myers, virtual.
Madam Chair, Todd Myers, Nikolai, Marianne, and Susan on your list have not signed in virtually.
Thank you. So William Sawhill is our next speaker in person. Welcome, Mr. Sawhill. You have 2 minutes.
Ma'am, my name is Todd Sawhill. I'm an active duty captain in the United States Navy with over 25 years of service at MacDill Air Force Base. After 17 moves over 9 states and 3 continents, due to the schools, community, and proximity to the habitats, I've chosen Lutz to be the place where my family of 6 can finally plant roots. My service has given me many great opportunities and gifts. However, one not so wonderful gift is spending the rest of my life on the Department of Defense Burn Pit Registry, managed to maintain essay on those who've been exposed to toxic carcinogenic materials. Google honoring our PACT Act for more details. For deeply personal yet empirically based reasons, it should surprise no one that I'm absolutely against the installation of 2 industrial incinerator facilities in Lutz. The application paperwork states these ACIs will absolutely release toxic chemicals into the air in the vicinity of 3 schools, parks, hundreds of family-occupied homes, a church, nursing home, a hospital, and likely protected wildlife, potentially 24 hours a day. In the interest of time, I won't prattle off all 53 toxins released, but I will give highlights. There's 187 hazardous pollutants, or HAPs, the EPA is required to control. 30 pose the greatest health. Of 30, 9 will be released by these facilities. Nitrogen oxides cause breathing problems, headaches, chronically reduced lung function. In the UK alone, it kills 23,000 per year. Sulfur dioxide can cause severe irritation of the throat and nose, respiratory issues, and accumulation of fluid in the lungs. The U.S. has cut SO2 emissions by 85% since 2009, but we're being asked to install a production facility in our backyards. By comparison, 5 parts per million is considered legal over an 8-hour time frame. That's 1 part per million equals 5 grams per ton, and we're asking to accept 2.6 tons per year. I implore all of you to deny the construction of this facility. I don't want to share concerns or admire problems. I want to fix them. I understand and embrace development and progress, but to approve this, to sanction this facility for the sake of increasing personal profit is no different than approving a preventable death sentence for my family and the residents of Lutz. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Ms. Angela Birdsong is virtual. Is Ms. Angela Birdsong signed in?
We have a call-in user with the last 2 digits, 37. Is that Angela Birdsong? It is not Angela. She did not sign into the meeting.
Thank you. And Mr. James Slattery, virtual.
Hello, my name is James Slattery. I live in the Promenade community. I'd like to give my own personal experience about living next to a similar industrial facility. The home I did have was in Sarasota, a very similar neighborhood, and there was some harmful impacts living near a similar site. Dump trucks would be driving by all day for unloads and loading material. The machinery noises that came from that site were overwhelming. Even when they were creating mulch and burning the excess, the small particles from that facility floated over our property if the wind was right, and caused issues with me and my expenses of also having the house power washed and cleaned up. And when I went to put the house on the market, no one wanted to buy my home because of that issue of being so close to that facility. And I ended up having to take a loss because of having the house on the market for such a long period of time. I know that people may not understand, but this is going to be a negative consequence. It doesn't matter who is regulating it. It's all about the people that want to come in the future and all the negative things that come with it. So I just want to give my experience about living near somewhere like that, and it does create a negative consequence. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slattery. And next speaker is Dr. Jennifer Collins, virtual. Is Dr. Jennifer Collins on the line?
Hi, sorry, it wasn't letting me unmute. As a professor with a PhD in an environmental science program, I would like to express my deep concern for the proposed yard waste incinerator. Just because land may be zoned for agriculture doesn't mean a commercial incinerator with the particles and pollution which will enter the atmosphere and contaminate the surrounding residential areas. You've heard about the nursing homes, right? A stone's throw away. Churches, a youth outdoor athletic field, again, a stone's throw away. And importantly, the many schools, should this be allowed to happen. When the many residential areas nearby were being built, surely one did not plan for an incinerator, and one should hope that if this was done in reverse, one wouldn't look to put residential areas in near such an incinerator. Regardless of the direction of the wind, the pollution will go directly over people's homes, the schools, those outdoor athletic fields, etc. We need to make a stand against this, and I'm asking for a call to action from you to make such a stand for the health of current and future generations. Consider all the other environmental catastrophes across the nation, and then the additional costs, economic and to people's health, that has happened as a result of such poor location decisions. If a firm no had been made at the beginning and they were told to find a piece of land that wasn't within residential areas, then those major environmental catastrophes would not have happened to the extent of impacting people's lives. Do we want Lutz to be in the headline nationwide for such environmental issues? Surely we want to grow this community with their children and encourage our families to come to this area and to the many schools and continue to have Lutz thrive. Further, we see many birds and other wildlife in the natural lakes around here that this project also puts at risk. This plan for an incinerator in this area has been poorly thought out by considering a location surrounded by residences, churches, outdoor athletic fields. Parents are even talking about pulling their kids from these outside athletic field sports. So now you have additional...
Sorry, your time is up. I'm sorry, your time is up. Thank you. And I'm just trying to run through everybody as quick as possible, keep it moving so we hear from as many people as possible. I hope you all understand. Eric Hart is our next speaker virtually.
Eric Hart did not sign into the meeting.
And Eric Forsyth.
Hi, Eric Forsyth. I live on Wicketfield Road in Lutz, Florida, speaking in opposition to the issuance of this permit. It is the mission of the EPC to protect our natural resources, environment, and quality of life in Hillsborough County. I remind you of this because this issue is not just about the environment, but also about the quality of life of the community you serve. I call on you to act in a responsible and moral manner and succeed where the County Commission failed. The applicant is attempting to run a commercial industrial waste facility in a suburban residential area. But their representatives, under oath, stated the rezoning would be, and I quote, a poster child of good transitional zoning and consistent with the character of the existing community. There will be an industrial-level environmental impact on this community that is home to over 25% of Lutz's population there will be an increase in air noise, land, and water pollution, and there will be a severe increase in wildfire risk from the trees, bushes, grasses that exist on the land and surrounding land. There is no place on this parcel that can safely provide adequate protection from these risks, or where it will not be a nuisance to the surrounding community, despite what the application shows. The Environmental Protection Act has a broad list of prohibitions towards this type of facility and its location in the community plan. Section 1-3 states that no person shall discharge any pollutant from any source that causes or tends to cause or contribute to the objectionable odor, which is defined by the EPC as an odor present, which by itself or in combination with others is or may be harmful to human health or welfare, or which creates a nuisance. And a nuisance includes the use of any property or facility or equipment that causes materially contribute to emissions, including dust, fumes, odor, and smoke, as to interfere with public health or safety, or causing injury or damage to real property, personal property, or life of any kind. Or, and I quote, is detrimental or harmful to the health, comfort, living conditions, welfare, and safety of the inhabitants of the county. Section C also states that a nuisance...
Thank you. I'm sorry, your time is up. Your time is up. And Ms. Jan Smith is our next speaker, signed up in person. I'm not seeing Jan Smith. Is she online?
She is not.
Okay. Nancy Pagano Littler is virtual.
She wasn't. Nancy wasn't, but she seemed to have logged off.
Okay, if she comes back in, we'll come back to her and let her have her turn. If she comes in while we're still on public comment. Stephanie Padalino, virtual.
Stephanie did not sign in.
Max Orr.
Max Orr did not sign in as well.
Jim Fetterman.
We do not have a Jim Fetterman in.
Chris Bowles.
Chris did not sign in as well.
Raymond Sala.
Did not sign in, and
Okay,
we do
well,
not have a Pamela.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
This is
Bye-bye.
excuse me. This is Pamela Ingert.
Caller
Angela
37.
Birdsong is on.
Okay, we can come back to Angela, but do we have Pamela Ingert?
Pamela did not sign into the meeting.
Okay, we'll go back to Angela Birdsong, who was not available when we called her name. Ms. Birdsong, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Angela Birdsong, candidate for Hillsborough County Commission, District 2. And I'm here to just say that I am in opposition of this project. I understand that it needs to be somewhere, but the location that it's cited for right now just doesn't make any sense to the residents. I happen to love that community. I lived in it for 20 years in Lake Carlton Arms, raised my son there as a single parent, went to Idlewild Baptist Church, and I can tell you that all the residents are going to stand up against this project because it's a beautiful community, and they certainly don't want their residential prices to go down. So I just wanted to make my voice heard. Anything I can do to stand up against it, I will. Angela Birdsong, candidate for Hillsborough County Commission, District 2.
Thank you, Ms. Birdsong. Gina Marie Smith.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. You have 2 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Gina Marie Smith. I live in the Promenade at Lake community in Luce. My home is about 7/10 of a mile from this proposed ACI incinerator site. I personally drove over that way last night. It is being cleared out, so it's kind of shocking that this is only in the review process. They are actively clearing the land as though it's already been approved. Very concerning my family. My daughter has asthma. My mother has a compromised immune system. She also lives in the Promenade community. Her home faces the outdoor recreational park that is at the Baptist Idlewild Church. You can hear the children playing outside 7 days a week, actively playing recreational sports. They'll be breathing in these toxins and carcinogens just as though we will in our community. This is going to affect our home values, but most importantly, our health. I ask the committee to take this very seriously because this is going to be a very harsh issue to the future of Lutz and our community. Please, please take this very seriously, because we're all going to be deeply affected. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison Jacobs. Is there an Allison Jacobs in person? Good morning, Ms. Jacobs. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Allison Jacobs, and my husband and I have 2 children, 9 and 7. We live less than 2,000 feet from the proposed location of the incinerators. I was shocked to hear that commercial air incinerators were potentially being built in such a densely populated area. Not only is it backing up to a K-8 school, but it's across from an assisted living and memory care facility, not to mention the area is home to protected wildlife such as bald eagles and sand cranes. The advocates for this facility are putting the health of our children, our elderly and wildlife, and ourselves at risk. Please reconsider how this area was rezoned from residential back to agricultural. It doesn't make sense. This project is a mistake. However, it isn't too late to make this right. Please protect the well-being of our community. This project sounds to me like the making of the next documentary of a town where everyone gets sick and dies because of poor decision making and risking the lives, health, and safety of its residents for $1. Please don't let this happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gladys Newton, virtual. Is there a Gladys Newton on the line?
Gladys Newton did not sign in.
Deepak Patel.
They did not sign in as well.
Teja Pate?
They did not sign in.
Sandra Graham.
Sandra, can you hear us? Ms. Graham, you are unmuted.
Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello, Sandra Graham?
Hello? Not Sandra Graham.
Okay, we can, you've got 2 minutes.
Hello?
Hello, please proceed. We can hear you. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. Stephen Dorn, sdorn@dornonline.com. The concern I have regarding the whole
I'm sorry,
facility is
what
that
is,
the containment of the
excuse me, what is your name? Did you say Stephen Gorham or something?
Dorn, D-O-R-N.
Sandra
So
Graham is our next speaker. Sandra Graham.
Do you have them on yours?
Okay. Brett Groves.
Brett Groves did not sign into the meeting.
He's approaching the podium. Mr. Groves, welcome.
I was originally
Virtual?
but
Thank
I'm
you.
here now,
You have
so.
2 minutes.
My name is Brett Groves. I'm a resident of the Promenade at Lake Park. We're a little less than a half-mile away from the proposal. So I'm joined here, my fellow members of the Lutz community, to voice my discontent in the permitting of this commercial air incinerators. It is incomprehensible that this type of polluting machine could be approved in the middle of this community. It is a total disregard of the citizens' health and well-being. Many years ago, this land area was designated agricultural, but as you're aware, Lutz is growing. Thousands of once agricultural land has shrank to a mere couple of acres where the incinerators are proposed. The surrounding land is no longer cattle fields, but is a neighborhood, it's churches, it's schools, it's medical facilities, it's athletic fields, it's senior living facilities. The short and long-term effects on this community will be devastating. So I'm here to ask that this commercial air incinerator not be approved. The will of the people in Lutz is strong, and this group here that is up here talking represents thousands of members who oppose this proposal. So the Environmental Protection Commission, you guys are tasked with a difficult job. The decisions you make will impact our community for decades and generations. apologize. The decisions you guys make will impact our community for decades, and you have to protect the environment and the people, and if this proposal goes through, you will be doing neither. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have time for one more speaker in our 45 minutes of public comment this morning. So is Lisa Wade available? Virtually, Lisa Wade.
Lisa, can you hear us? Lisa, you're on
Hello,
mute.
can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. You have 2 minutes, Ms.
Thank you very
Wade.
much. Okay, thank you. 2 minutes is very short to say everything I want to say. I would like to start with prayer and petitioning to our Lord Jesus. Obviously, his will be done in this decision, and we pray for strong opposition. 60 years ago, I grew up on Jurassy Road on Lake Wilson. My family still resides there, Mr. Jim Ward and Miss Demetria Ward. And we have seen nothing but destruction of all the property, the wetlands. We knew the Jurassys, rode my horses all up and down the road. I appreciate everybody that has spoke before me on the dangers, the carcinogenics, the wetlands, respiratory. Our children also attend Idlewild, and we do participate in all the outdoor activities that go on there. My children, my grandchildren are now 5th generation from Luke. I attended Luke. It saddens me that Peter Jurassy would leave his family legacy to build air curtain incinerators on what we grew up, basically the 10th house on Jurassy Road. And we see our wetlands bulldozed over. We see our deer slaughtered on the road. And it saddens me that 200 plus homes are going to be built right across from my father's house. Our property value will be greatly diminished, and we strongly oppose the air curtain incinerators. And I want to thank everybody who has taken their time this morning to speak on the behalf of preserving Lutz.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Your
you.
time is up. Thank you very much. We have gotten through half our long list of public comment this morning, and I want to thank all the speakers for providing this input today. I found, and I know we all have heard the concerns expressed today in person and virtually. Some really compelling points were made, and that is being taken into consideration by the EPC regulators as they move into the next steps to consider this permit. Again, this is at the very, very beginning of the process, where we are just taking a report today about how this will play out. There will be other opportunities for public comment at the meeting at August 23rd, and I know we have all received many, many emails as well, and we are reading those, and please feel free to continue sending your comments in writing if you didn't get a chance to speak today, and continue. I encourage you all to continue being a part of this process as it goes forward. And maybe, Ms. DeLu, since while everybody is here at the end of public comment, if you could explain just the next opportunities for public comment before we lose some of the audience.
So do you want to allow public comment at the end of the meeting? We have the items to get through, and then
Right.
the ones that are on the list, we would just start from where we left off and continue. But we have about an hour long or so meeting.
It took us 45 minutes to get through the first 50. It would take us another 45 to get through the next 50. I don't know. I know some of us will not. We'll see how we go at that point. Okay. We'll see where we are at and how many people have been forced to leave at that point.
Yes. Well, what we can do is items 8D and 8E, we can go ahead and move those just for next meeting, September. So that'll leave the consent in items 9A, B, and C.
I'll make a motion that we defer items 9A and 9D to the next EPC meeting.
9D and 9E.
I'm sorry.
9D and 9E.
9D and E?
Yes.
Okay.
Second. Got a motion to defer items 9D and E in order to save time by Commissioner Overman, second by Commissioner White. Seeing no further discussion, please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay. All right. So I was just asking if you could tell the audience about the August 23rd opportunity, as well as where to send comments in writing, as if they didn't get a chance to speak today, or some of the virtual speakers who didn't make it.
Yes, we do have on our website, which is epchc.org, and at the very top is information about the ACI project. If they click that link, they'll see all the information, including maps and the application. And there is a meeting next Tuesday that's virtual that they can sign up for. We've already had about 650 people sign up virtually to attend that meeting. And they can go to the website for more information, and they can also email from the website.
Great. So that's epchc.org, Environmental Protection Commission, Hillsborough County.org. You can, and right at the top of the page is more information about how to stay engaged. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
What is the meeting on the 23rd?
So when we identified this as a project of heightened concern, it generated the need for a community meeting, and that's what this meeting will be. It's a community meeting on this project.
And it will be held virtually, and
yes.
And there'll be information presented.
There'll be information presented, and people will have a chance to speak. We don't have a line of public speaking to line up for it, but people will be able to ask questions.
Commissioner Overman, you're recognized.
Thank you. The reason we're asking the structure of the question, frequently if the presentation is made so some answers are provided, then that would give the residents a better understanding of how the project, where it is in the stage, how it's moving forward, what was considered, what are the issues, what EPC's findings are as part, and then that way the residents can then ask additional concerns, rather than, as we do here, public comment first, and then we're going to have the report later, which makes it really hard to be able to recognize the value of your participation, because you may be addressing something that we're going to cover today. So what is the structure of the presentation or the community meeting on Tuesday?
So the structure will be, Reggie Sanford will be leading that. He will be the one giving the presentation today, and he will take from the public comments, from comments that you all have and concerns, and adjust the same presentation for Tuesday's community meeting.
And that's done first before public comment?
For the community meeting?
Yes.
Yes, we don't have a line of public comment because it's not a regular EPC meeting, so there isn't a sign up, but he will give the presentation first. So if somebody did have questions, or like we heard from people today, the best way is really to email those in ahead of time, and we go through and address those questions. But they can also be online asking questions also.
So they will be able to ask questions after the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I needed clarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I apologize for skipping ahead in the agenda to this, but I just wanted to clarify for people who have come and are listening right now what the next steps are. We do have a couple more things on our agenda before we actually get to this presentation, and we'll go through those now. So starting with the consent agenda.
Move the consent agenda.
Second. Okay, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Cohen, second by Commissioner Kemp. Seeing no discussion, please record your vote.
Okay, it's there, yeah.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. That takes us to item 9, our regular agenda, starting with the action item we have today, request for pollution recovery funds to sample and assess petroleum contamination. Ms. DeLu, who's taking us through that?
Yes, Andrea Murley from our Waste Division will be presenting that, and she is virtual.
Good morning, Commissioners. Andrea Murley, PC staff. I'm here this morning to talk to you about a request for EPC pollution recovery funds for a petroleum cleanup site. Heckman was the owner of this property located at 7702 Morning Glory Lane in Tampa in 2002. In August of 2002, Mr. Heckman parked his truck adjacent to the road outside the surveyed boundary of his property, seen here in red, and diesel fuel leaked onto the ground. As the responsible party, Mr. Heckman removed and properly disposed of the contaminated soil. This area is shown here in yellow, outside his property boundary. For the Department of Environmental Protection to issue a site rehabilitation completion order, the assessment is necessary to confirm soil and groundwater meet the state cleanup target levels. The responsible party in this case submitted documentation indicating financial inability to pay for the assessment, filed for bankruptcy protection, and has not owned the property since 2004. Since that time, Mr. Heckman cannot be found, and EPC legal staff have determined that Hillsborough County and the adjacent property owner are not financially responsible to complete the work. Because traditional enforcement procedures have not been successful at closing the site, the EPC requests authorization to expend up to $15,000 of pollution recovery funds.
I'm sorry, we've lost your audio. Did you move away from the mic?
Oh, can you hear me?
We lost you for a minute. Now we've got you back. Continue.
Okay. Do you see the presentation?
Yes, we see that. PRF funding request.
Okay, yes. So we would just like to request the authorization to expend up to $15,000 of pollution recovery funds to hire an environmental consultant to conduct soil and groundwater sampling and analyses to confirm there's no petroleum contamination remaining.
Move to authorize.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Overman, second by Commissioner White. Seeing no board discussion, please record your vote.
Do we have quorum still?
Hmm?
Okay, oh, good.
Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you. And thank you for that item. Okay, so now we're going to our report on the air quality concerns regarding the I-275 expansion. And that's Reggie.
Good morning, Commissioners. Reggie Sanford, Air Director, EPC staff. Let me first start off by saying this item was added to today's agenda by Commissioner Overman and Commissioner Smith. Let me share my screen with you. Okay, great. At the last TPO meeting, the Transportation Planning Organization meeting, board members requested that EPC staff review environmental assessment reports that had been provided to FDOT staff by resident, and also reports that were conducted by FDOT staff. So before I get too far into my slides, I just want to make it clear that today's presentation will center on what we know about the project. We'll speak to our regulatory limitations. We'll, try to address what we believe were a couple of misstatements from that meeting. FDOT staff has forwarded us what we believe to be the relevant reports, and we're in the process of reviewing them now. That being said, we plan to provide a full report at the September meeting after we've had time to review the information that was provided to us. The I-275 Capacity Improvement Project construction began last October. The project will add 1 lane to I-275 in each direction using existing right-of-way. And the project limits are from north of I-4 to north of US 92, which is Hillsborough Avenue. They also plan to construct noise barriers along that corridor, install fencing, add some intelligent transportation devices, and reconstruct the overpass at several locations. The overpasses seem to be, I guess, where the root of many of the concerns emerged from. Some citizens have made it known to us that they're not in favor of the project. They've also asserted that they have that they're experiencing the impacts of unwanted dust, noise, and they claim that they're being exposed to toxic emissions. Earlier this summer, our office actually received some complaints about the project, and under typical circumstances, we would normally respond to it. However, in this instance, it should be understood that our role in regulating FDOT and any state agency is very limited. We are preempted by state law from regulating any state road project in most circumstances. The only area in which I can think of that we would have regulatory authority is if there were, say, some houses along the interstate and they wanted to remove those houses, then they would fall under the asbestos delegation that we have from DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection. And then we would regulate those projects, demolition and removal. But I am pleased to report that DOT has been, cooperative in working with us, responding to information requests. They actually gave us an on-site tour of the project the same day the issue came up in front of the TPO. Here are some preliminary photos that we received from FDOT. Recall that I said earlier some citizens had concerns over dust from the project. DOT staff sent us these photos that somewhat show their best management practices as they're chipping away concrete. They're keeping it watered down. As you can see, they're taking these precautions both day and night. We listened to most of the TPO meeting recording, but I believe there was a segment of the video that was clipped from the version that we have. There were a couple of things said that we did hear at the meeting that we'd just like to correct for the record. Our staff did not provide a toxicity assessment report, neither did we receive or sign off on one. Also, I believe it was stated that EPC used the same assessment contractor as FDOT. I believe those contractors are selected from a master list. So to reiterate my opening thoughts, we're asking the commission's permission to come back to the September meeting. We believe that will give our staff enough time to evaluate the relevant reports that we've received, and we can provide you, our presentation, basically an analysis of the information that we received. We've also asked FDOT if they would be present and accompany us at that presentation, and they can answer any questions that would fall outside of our normal authority. So that is a summary of where we are now. We tried to jump on this right away. I can also tell you that we're also investigating the possibility of erecting an air monitor near one of those overpasses. It's in the works. Our investigation of being able to do that is in the works right now, and we'll have hopefully better clarity when we come back in September. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sanford, and thanks to you and the rest of the EPC staff for moving so quickly to get this report started to us for this meeting after we heard those compelling concerns from citizens at our transportation planning organization meeting just a week or so ago. And so I really appreciate staff moving so quickly. I think it's a good idea to, just have this preliminary report, straighten out the record of what exactly was told to us by FDOT at that MPO or TPO meeting, so that from here we can move forward to a fuller report in September and understand how the citizens' concerns are being addressed there. Commissioner Overman, you're recognized.
Thank you. And I, because I've been paying attention to this issue associated with air quality, largely because I am impacted by the interstate on a daily basis and have black soot that ends up all over my place that's unrelated to this issue. But air monitoring in this particular area is of heightened concern for the people who live in that area, given there's been a historic challenge of whenever we've had a high pollution alert or hazardous air quality alert, it has traditionally been along this highway, this section of the highway in our region. So the area is hypersensitive to it on a good day because of that. Air monitoring equipment also actually picks up what's in the air and maybe not what falls as part of the construction. So it could, that the soot or things like that are picked up in the various different areas could be related to a lot of things. But my concern and what I think we are hearing is air quality associated with and any pollutants associated with the construction that's being done in the area. When I got briefed on what EPC was looking at in this concern and the opportunity to address the residents concerned, it would require air monitoring equipment that is currently dedicated to Gopher Industries, because that battery smelting plant is under high observation as a consequence of some history there. We've got our EPC apparently has its air monitoring equipment resources dedicated to that project, and that's fair. It's of great concern there as well, given the potential for lead poisoning that could potentially harm the air as well as the employees that work at that facility. So I was looking for solutions to be able to identify how we would acquire air monitoring equipment that would be able to monitor the air quality, not just the sediment, what falls, but the air quality in that area. And so I was curious if there's ever been, or if there's an opportunity to lease the equipment at FDOT's expense to ensure that, in fact, their practices of safety and watering, to reduce dust and other things, are actually doing the job. Because I know we can have OSHA-related practices to improve, but when you're breaking up that much of the highway on the edge or changing the air quality in that area, that is what the residents are concerned about. Is it possible that air monitoring equipment could be potentially leased or brought online for a short period of time? But I would actually like to, long-term, request that anytime an interstate is actually being reconstructed that would create hazard, that part of the structure of that process is actually air quality monitoring versus the sediment testing process that has been recommended by the contractor that FDOT uses. So I was just curious if it's possible that we could make that kind of recommendation for future projects, but also in this case, we need an air quality, quality monitoring equipment in some way, shape, or form. And I'm looking forward to seeing how we can get that done.
Thank you. Commissioner Kemp, you're recognized.
Thank you. And I'm glad that we had this kind of preliminary report right away to deal with the TPO requests that were made by the public. One member who tested, or one citizen who tested the air herself had stated that it was the report came back that they were being exposed to 1 million times the toxicity that they were, that was allowed. And I know that we had response responses that day by FDOT with regards to how that testing was done. So the question was kind of how the material was collected. I think the idea of asking the EPC to do this was not that they had regulatory control over FDOT, which is what this slide said. I don't think any of us ever thought that that was the case, but that there should be some assurances that there's a more independent source to evaluate this, because first they had whomever the resident had testing it, and they apparently collected it themselves. And second, then the report was reviewed by FDOT that said that the way the material was collected would very much affect the report, the information we got back. So I think that they're both not to cast aspersions on anyone or, the people who reviewed or looked at it, but we thought for assurances of the residents that we would want a more sophisticated, accurate test so that we get back information that would not be influenced either by any party involved or concerned, that we have something independent. So that was the idea of asking the EPC to do this, because I think there's a level of trust that the EPC has had in this community, and it wasn't that we thought if the EPC collected this, then we could have some regulatory control over FDOT, but more independence, and not by the report, not by the testing that was already done, but by testing that EPC would pursue. And I think if there needs to be a cost evaluated, I like the idea of FDOT coming forward to pay that. Or if need be, then I think that we should find the money for the EPC, however that goes down. I also am very interested, in the entire state of Florida, Hillsborough County has had the poorest air quality from what I've seen over the years, the poorest air quality day after day. And actually the air shed where that poorest air quality exists is right over I-275 and I-4. It's just like a tunnel over it. And more what we're learning about, and it's relevant to this group also, is the effects actually of the air sheds within interstates in particular, and what they create. And there's been some watershed studies that have been, I've seen over just within the last decade about the dangers of living near an interstate and the kinds of dispersions that it makes into the air. This is, of course, a very particular, that we're asking about here, particularly about the particulate matter and the construction debris, but just in general as well. The impacts. And I don't know, I would have thought that the monitoring that informed that information was because EPC already had monitors set up there, but I guess I see. So I'd like, first short term, I'd like to see that we do some monitoring, that there is not with the idea that we can regulate FDOT, but that we get some independent information for our citizens. And then second, I'd really like to look at what we have, and if we need to finance more collection, I think that would be very valuable and something that we might have to consider going down the road, whether the immediates for the construction and funded by FDOT or us. And then second, long term, I think we need some more robust monitoring, and whatever that may cost or add to the EPC budget, I'd like us to have that come forward to us to do that.
Commissioners, we are evaluating that. We are looking at the cost of monitors, the cost of location, identifying a location, and we'll be bringing that back to you in September.
Thank you. Commissioner Cohen, you're recognized.
Thank you. When this came up at the TPO, I think we all felt it was difficult for us to handle the issue at the Transportation Planning Organization. And FDOT did not appear to be prepared that day to respond to the questions that came up. I think we really need to hear from them directly. And I don't know, this is as good a place of any as to discuss where we ought to hear from them. And it probably ought to be before this next Environmental Protection Commission meeting. It seems to me that the missing piece here is getting a report from FDOT about what they have. And perhaps they ought to bring that to the full Board of County Commissioners. Because I think, to your point, none of us thinks that the EPC is going to be able to regulate a state agency. So if we're going to do anything about this, the first thing we've got to do is find out exactly what their tests are showing. And I think that we need to, I think we need to get them in front of the Board of County Commissioners to make an actual report. Is that scheduled already?
No.
Okay, so I think we should formally ask for that here and see if we can, and I'll make a motion to do that, to get them into the September 5th Board of County Commissioners meeting with a report on where things stand, so that when we come back here, we'll have some context around. I mean, Commissioner Kemp is saying trust but verify. So let's hear what they have, and then we can talk here about verifying it with whatever method we're going to use.
I'll second your motion.
Okay.
So our EPC meeting would be September 15th, but deciding, or I don't know about making the action based on the BOCC.
The BOCC meeting will be September 8th. It's a Thursday because that's Labor Day week. So the meeting is pushed back a day onto a Thursday. So that would be a week prior to the EPC meeting. So we could at least hear what's been presented. And if there's action that the EPC would need to take, we can address that at the BOCC meeting. I'm sorry, I just.
Thank you. And my question is, would this come as a commissioner item? Would one of you like to, work with FDOT to bring it, to put it on the agenda as a commissioner item? And Commissioner Overman, our board chair, is indicating
I'll ask staff to bring it to
she'll
the
ask
agenda.
staff to get it on the agenda if we can, if FDOT is willing and able to get on our board agenda on September 8th.
Yeah, I don't think it matters how it comes so much as that it be there.
All right, I just wanted to settle it so we wouldn't
Yeah.
just be all expecting something that wasn't
arranged for.
Yeah.
Commissioner, if I may, Rick Marotti with the legal department.
Thank you.
Is it able just to clarify, this would be a BOCC agenda item, or would it be an EPC meeting within the BOCC?
It would be a BOCC agenda item.
But not to replace what we're doing here later in the month. To do that in advance of it, so that we have some context when we come back here as the EPC.
And what Mr. Marotti is asking and pointing out is that we have the ability as the Board of County Commissioners, since we're also the Environmental Protection Commission, to have a little section of our board meeting where we reconvene as the EPC momentarily just to consider that issue. But let's let our board chair work that out with staff onto exactly how that comes on the agenda. For now, we can just consider.
And I don't think we should do that because I think we all know that we don't have authority over FDOT as the EPC.
That's
so
true.
I think as the board is a better fit.
That's true. Mr. Marotti, any other thoughts on that format or procedure?
No, that's fine. We just wanted clarity if we were having to set up a special meeting or not. Appreciate that clarification.
And you agree that you think it's fine for us to consider it take it up as the board, and of course you all will be on the line and
Yeah, I was gonna say, as long as they're
paying
available.
attention.
Yeah. Obviously, we will participate, but just to clarify, the state preemption, I believe, cuts across all boards, whether it's the county or the Environmental Protection Commission. That's not to say that the county doesn't have other opportunities to address it and interact with FDOT, but I just want to make that clear.
Absolutely. We're just, we understand that. So, Commissioner Myers, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to add to have the EPC to give a report at the TPO meeting, because the issue that we are discussing now happened in our TPO meeting, and we have a different audience. So if EPC can come back and give the same report they're going to give to us, to give it in a TPO meeting.
You know, that's a good point, just because of the different audience. So, and some of the different members who have heard the original. So, what I'm hearing is a hope to bring FDOT to our Board of County Commission meeting, and then a week later to have a report with EPC kind of going over that, and some future point we could bring it all home to the TPO meeting. Correct? Okay,
Yes.
we've got a motion.
That's September 14th.
Yeah, we've got right. So the TPO meeting is the day before our EPC meeting, but I'm thinking we'll do EPC board and then bring it to the following TPO, right? Okay. Motion on the floor, Commissioner Cohen, second by Commissioner Kemp. Please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you, and I'll just wrap up by assuring the two speakers that we had to come speak to this particular topic this morning, Ms. Savitz and Mr. Fernandez, that, although your time was short this morning, the EPC staff and the director of the Air Division, Mr. Reggie Sanford, has reviewed your comments at the TPO meeting that were made there, as well as reading through and reviewing the complaint that has come into the EPC. And in fact, Mr. Sanford, the director of the Air Division, actually drove out to the site between then and now. So APC has really been scrambling to understand the issues, and I just want you to be assured that although your time was short today, the issues that you're raising, the concerns that you're raising are being thoroughly reviewed. Commissioner Hagan. Okay, all right. Thank you. And so that takes us to our next item, the air curtain incinerator application, and we'll start with a report by Reggie Sanford again.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Mr. Sanford.
Yes. Reggie Sanford again. Thank you, Commissioner. So this item was added to the commission agenda by Commissioner Hagan. Let me share my presentation with you. Okay. Today I'll speak to you about the air curtain incinerator permit application that has generated so much attention. I'll give you an overview of our processes and also clarify a few items that may help the audience better understand how our processes work. EPC is authorized under our Act and delegation agreements to issue air pollution permits on behalf of the state of Florida. The Jurassic Partnership submitted a permit application to erect 2 air curtain incinerators, commonly called ACIs, in the Lutz area. Because of the nature of the project and the possibility that it may impact a broad number of residents, we sought approval from our acting director, Ms. DeLue, to have the request declared a project of heightened concern. What this means is that now we require the applicant to undertake additional public noticing beyond what would normally be customary. Likewise, our staff also reached out to a large number of residents near the planned operating site to make them aware of the project. The applicant posted signs on the site indicating the submittal of their application, and they also notified adjacent neighbors and HOAs within a 1-mile radius of the project. What our air staff did was take the added step of sending letters to every resident within a half-mile radius of the property. We posted probably 4 to 6 signs throughout the community, notifying them of the project, and we notified them of the fact that EPC staff will host a virtual community meeting, which I'll speak a little bit more about later on. The applicant is requesting to erect 2 air curtain incinerators to dispose of yard debris. If granted, they would burn up to 22,000 tons of debris each year. The project would be located at 1225 Crystal Lake Road. Listening to the applicant's consultant this morning, he pointed out the fact that they submitted an amended application. Just to let you know, I have not seen those amended numbers yet. The presentation was completed before he sent his amendment in. So the 22,000 ton per year number is what we have as of the completion of today's presentation. Here's a map that shows the perspective of the proposed site juxtaposed to nearby residents. As you can see, homes align the areas around the site, some commercial activity around the site. This is just to put everything into perspective. So for some people who may not have experience in dealing with an ACI, this slide will give you a better understanding of what an ACI is. It's a huge metal box. The parameters on the one that we saw in the project application would be about 40 feet by 11 feet. And it's designed to burn vegetative debris. So debris would be dumped through the top of the box. It would then be set on fire, and the combustion would take place in the center of the box here. Air is forced through the top, as you can see right here, forced through the top. It circulates and it generates a really high heat so that you have a better combustion process. And if you look at number 2 here, let me get my mouse, number 2 here, this is where the curtain comes in. The air that's being forced from this manifold, from the manifold all the way to number 3, is supposed to be the curtain. In other words, it's a shield to prevent some of the smoke, some of the particulates from coming out and arising into the atmosphere. I have this link to show you an animation of what one looks like in action. So here you see the vegetative debris on the bottom. It's on fire. The air comes from number 1 through the manifold and circulates on the interior. And then number 2, where the forced air is coming out, it forms a curtain that should lead to a cleaner burn. When an ACI operates, it's expected to generate a number of pollutants. I would say that any type of vegetative burning process generates these same pollutants, but in varying amounts. The amounts, however, will determine the classification of the permit that could be issued. It would say, either it's a large source, which, some people may say heavy industrial, or it would be a minor source, which would, correspond with light industrial. The permit for these ACIs are issued by EPC, but again, we permit on behalf of the state. So the next statement that I'm about to make is probably, in my opinion, the single most important point that we as staff can make today. And that is, we permit through delegated agreements with the state of Florida. So in Hillsborough County, we're their agent. EPC is the agent of Hillsborough County when it comes to these types of permits. And we're strictly bound to apply the air permitting rules that regulate ACIs. If an applicant meets those requirements, we're compelled to issue the permit. So it's not a subjective undertaking that we make, but it is, it's our charter and it's part of our delegation agreement. I think it's also important to point out that we issue permits on behalf of the state. Because we issue permits on behalf of the state, we cannot consider local zoning and land uses. I know those were points made by some of the folks who took the time and opportunity to come out today to speak to this project. But our operations don't take into consideration zoning and land uses. A couple more important points on this slide is that all ACIs must adhere to state and federal regulations. This summary here are a list of some of the, not all inclusive, but a list of some of the basic regulations that they have to adhere to. Number one would be, burning vegetation only. This is, you can't put anything else in here except for natural vegetation. There are limits on the amount of smoke an ACI may produce. They're required to maintain operating records, and they're subject to daily hours of operation. The permit that would be issued would be valid in 5-year increments. So if it's issued, they would get a permit for 5 years. At the end of the 5 years, they can go through a similar renewal process. Some additional requirements that we're considering, and I think it's important because the requirements that we're trying to implement at this point are not required. Sometimes it's often a negotiation to have additional requirements in their permit. When we do these types of permit, include limiting the applicant to daytime operations, requiring a fire suppression system, establishing a minimum wetland setback limit, and possibly limiting the total amount of debris that can be burned during a given year. Our next steps are to conduct the community meeting on Tuesday night. We expect to issue a draft permit by the end of August, the end of this month. After the draft is issued, the clock begins on the 14-day public comment period. This would be the time frame for anyone who wanted to raise concerns about the issuance to make their concerns known. At the end of this time period, if there were no petitions, EPC staff would issue the final permit in accordance with the governing rules, which would be state and federal in this case. If the draft were to be contested, then there's a hearing process that would take place before the permit moves forward. And Mr. Marati, I know he's on the call and he could speak to that, any details of that, should you have any questions. Here is some information on the upcoming community meeting. As Mr. Liu mentioned earlier, it will be a virtual meeting, August 23rd, which is next Tuesday at 6 p.m. I understand there are over 600 people who are registered to participate. Also, as Mr. Liu said, they'll have the opportunity to ask questions of us. If they can send them in early, it'd be more beneficial because we can evaluate them, consolidate them, and provide a unified response. There is a registration required to participate in the WebEx meeting. And if you look at the link here at the bottom, any interested party can go to the web address hosted on the EPC website and obtain permit information, additional factual information, and information on how to register for the community meeting. That concludes my presentation to this point. I'll be happy to answer any questions. I'll leave the screen up if you'd like for me to return to a particular slide.
Thank you, Mr. Sanford. Commissioner Hagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate Mr. Sanford's presentation. First of all, I want to thank everyone who came down this morning, everyone who spoke virtually on this issue. I also want to thank Senator Cruz for her comments in opposition. Before I make my comments, I would like to show a brief clip on this issue, and I believe AV has it queued up.
Lutz are expressing their concerns over a proposed air permit to operate air curtain incinerators nearby.
ABC Action News reporter Mary O'Connell is learning more about the proposal and why some neighbors say it's not welcome in their backyard.
Jen Messer feels strongly about a proposal near her home.
Would you want to breathe that in? Would you allow your children to breathe that in?
A notice of new air pollution source says an owner will be operating a new commercial vegetative yard waste and land clearing debris disposal facility on Crystal Lake Road, and that the permit application being considered is the proposal to install 2 permanent air curtain incinerators, or ACIs, on the property. The notice states this type of operation will have the potential to generate smoke and dust from the burning and handling of materials, and an ACI is designed to blow a curtain of air over the burning material to promote efficient combustion and minimize the smoke and embers emitted from this operation.
And then this is going to be burned in the backyard of a school and across the street from an open air facility where kids play sports year round.
There's a nursing home right next door to where the proposed site is. So to me, it's not a good fit.
Jennifer Reardon lives in a different neighborhood and is also concerned.
Everything that's local to this in a several mile radius, with winds that we get every afternoon with an afternoon rain, et cetera, what does that mean for us?
A representative for the permit applicant told me an ACI reduces the amount of pollution in the air versus having an open air burn, and also said they'll comply with all the rules set forth by different regulatory agencies responsible for overseeing the construction, operation, and maintenance of the ACIs. Next week, there will be a virtual community meeting on the proposed project. We have more information on registration for that meeting on our website, abcactionnews.com. In Lutz, Mary O'Connell, ABC Action News.
Thank you. I thought that would help provide a better perspective of the project's impact on the neighborhood. Let me start out by saying that the notion of building and operating commercial incinerators on a permanent basis in a residential area is outrageous. By now, we've all received an avalanche of contacts, I think over 400 emails, 1,500 individuals signed a petition from the greater Lutz community expressing opposition, frustration, disbelief, and concern at the possibility of having 2 massive fire pits operating in such a diverse and populated area. They are turning to us to protect them and their families. Candidly, and I've represented this area for a long time, I cannot recall another issue in Lutz that has generated so much opposition. I think you probably have to go back to the 80s when the east-west road, for those of you that have been here for a long time, recall that was proposed to go through the Lutz community, and there was a significant uproar about that. Now, I've come to learn that large-scale vegetation burning operations are not that uncommon. Air curtain incinerators, or ACIs, are routinely found in use at building and agricultural sites. The big difference is most burning operations are done on a short-term basis, whereas this application proposes that the operation will be on a permanent enterprise. So this situation is unique in that regard. I've also been told that there are only 2 other locations with permanent operations in Hillsborough and only 50 across Florida. Those locations in Hillsborough are in the extreme east and northwest parts of the county. Now, I know every inch of the Lutz community, and the idea of incinerators burning year-round with all their adverse consequences to health and safety is contemptible. Board members, you don't need to look any further in the last page of the petitioner's application for some shocking projections of hazardous pollutants that will be put in the air if these incinerators are allowed to open. Chemical compounds including nitrogen oxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, as well as benzene, formaldehyde, and other hazardous particulates. The applicant's own numbers put potential emissions at nearly 140 tons a year. That is based on burning 25,000 tons per year of vegetation and operating 8,760 hours per year. That's equal to essentially 24/7, 365. If this permit is issued, thousands of residents will be adversely impacted. Young and old, healthy and the sick, expectant mothers, veterans, those who with compromised immune and respiratory systems. I'd like to show a picture now. Do we have that? And Senator Cruz showed a different type picture, but I think this really, again, helps put it into perspective. Within a half a mile of these incinerators, you have Ottawa Baptist Church, 2 senior living facilities, and a recently zoned 200-unit housing development. Within 1 mile is an expansive multi-field recreation complex, charter school, urgent care center, and numerous single and multifamily housing communities. Within 1.5 miles is a public elementary school, a full-service hospital, a golf course with 3 county parks, including another multi-field sports complex, several shopping centers with 3 grocery stores, significantly more housing communities, and countless small businesses. Thank you. You can take that down. Make no mistake, those furnaces put the general welfare in the community at risk. Their very health and safety hangs in the balance. We, as the elected community leaders, have the ethical, moral, and legal obligation to protect our residents. And yet, with a project of this magnitude, we're blocked from the process, restricted from engagement. I'm told that our EPC personnel are tasked via the state DEP with processing the permit, and Mr. Sanford went through this. This is primarily an administrative process, essentially meet the criteria and get your permit. Well, as we heard yesterday when discussing the Keystone development, once the permit is issued, the fight is largely over. We cannot allow things to go any further. We must stop this now. Now, I wish there was a simpler, more diplomatic way to address this alarming issue, but we're being boxed out. We must take a firm stand for the benefit of the citizens to whom we are pledged to serve. Now, candidly, EPC staff may disagree, and that's okay. I want to stress that in no way am I disparaging them or going after our staff. They're simply doing what they're tasked to do. I also understand that taking action today may very well cause a legal challenge by the applicant, and that's okay too. I remind this board that on several occasions, we have taken land use positions that we have acknowledged will likely result in legal challenges. I believe it's Commissioner Kemp and Commissioner Smith have led the charge in those cases because they felt so strongly that it was the right position to take. Commissioners, I can't in good conscience sit back and say, well, this is an administrative action and we cannot do anything about this dangerous intrusion into the community. I feel very strongly that the idea of an incinerator in a residential and environmentally sensitive area like Lutz is incompatible, dangerous, and frankly offensive. We must take action today. My heart goes out to these folks in the audience. I'm standing with them, and I respectfully ask you to do the same. So my motion today is to instruct our EPC director to stop all work related to the permit application for the operation of permanent ACIs in Lutz, to not issue the draft permit, and then furthermore, I move that this board authorize either a letter or resolution clearly stating our stern opposition to allowing the operation of these ACIs, and that a copy be sent to the governor, the secretary of the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and to all members of our state legislative delegation. And that's my motion.
Second.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We hear you. We hear you. Thank you very much. We've got a motion by Commissioner Hagan, second by Commissioner Myers. Commissioner, I have some commissioners in the queue who wanted to speak to this topic. Is this to the motion, Commissioner Overman? To the motion?
Not to the motion, but it relates to it. But we'll go ahead and pass this item if need be.
Commissioner Kemp to the motion?
It wasn't going to be the motion because I wasn't expecting it when I put my hand up there. I guess I would just like to have some legal advice here as to whether we compromise anything by doing this today at this point,
That's a
like
fair
in
question.
terms of our quasi-judicial place in this or elsewhere. I just like to have some legal advice here.
Yeah,
maybe
Commissioners,
Mr. Marotti, maybe Mr. Gormley as well.
I would like for Mr. Marotti to speak on this issue.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Marotti.
Good morning again, Commissioner Rick Marty. And again, I want to apologize for not being able to be there. 3 attorneys all had COVID exposures, and we found out 2 of us 8 p.m. last night. I really apologize. But yes, the EPC, as Mr. Sanford said, is delegated by the state of Florida to issue air permits and other permits, but in this case, an air permit. And so we're contractually obligated to just apply the state laws in this process. And that's what we're doing. And so unlike some of the other permits that you've seen, a lot of dock permits where if it's challenged, it then comes back to the commission as a quasi-judicial body to rule on it after a hearing officer. That's not the situation here. It's a streamlined, straight process. And if there's a challenge, it then goes to the secretary of the DEP to agree or disagree with an administrative law judge as opposed to a local hearing officer. So yeah, that's the conundrum we have here. This is a state permitting process, and it doesn't come before the commission, and the commission wouldn't sit in a quasi-judicial process. And as always, and it's a tough balance. The commission is in a legislative setting, and the executive director and its staff are the executive section that has to issue permits or denials. And so we totally understand the community sentiment and the commissioner sentiment. It's totally understand it, and we can't obviously say don't do this motion, but we have to follow through on our contractual obligations with the state and process the permit if they qualify for the state law under state law.
Mr. Marotti, I don't think I understood. You said if we take this motion that as the EPC Commission directs that the permitting process stops, you would, as an agent of the state in this particular kind of permitting process, be obligated to continue going on anyway? Or, I mean, how would this motion affect what you do or what the agency does from here?
Yeah. Exactly. We have an obligation. We're sitting here. The staff is sitting as a state DEP. We're not sitting as the EPC in this situation. So we have to follow through with the state laws and implement the state laws. There are multiple other permits and authorizations this facility needs to get from the state of Florida, not through our delegation, separately from the state of Florida, from the county. Where there's other opportunities for the county to potentially interject. Again, the commissioners are going to vote on whatever motion they're going to vote on, but my legal recommendation is we cannot derogate our duties under our contract with the state of Florida to keep acting as state of Florida permitting processors in this case. We have to follow state law, let the permitting process go through to its conclusion. And again, that does not end up with the commissioners, don't end up on a final vote, yay or nay, should the permit issue. It goes to the executive director or a delegated person, and then to the secretary of the DEP if there's a challenge.
Thank you. So just to be clear, the EPC, our Hillsborough County EPC has a couple of categories of authority. They enforce and issue permits according to our local county EPC rule. But we have also been fortunate to get the state Department of Environmental Protection to delegate authority to our local EPC in certain other kinds of state permitting. There's many, many benefits to that, to having our local EPC scientists who understand our specific areas and wetlands and neighborhoods to be delegated that authority from the state and in those instances. And as you said, Mr. Marotti, in those authorities, the appeals for those don't even come back to this board. They go up to the state. You are simply carrying out a state function. Would we risk, losing that delegation if we did not carry it out as the state mandates?
We have 15 delegations from federal, state, and local organizations. And that's always a concern. If we interject politics into our administrative process, they're going to call into question, are we going to do that for future permits also? So we have to have that in mind and be cautious of that.
Thank you. Commissioner Overman, to the motion.
Yeah, it is actually to the motion to some degree, because I'm
No,
you
I'm
may
sorry.
not.
Public comment is not now. Sorry. Commissioner Overman.
Thank you.
To the motion.
And this is where I'm trying to back into how we got here. There's an application for a permit for an incinerator. But prior to that, there was a land decision. There was a major modification that permitted something that may not be compatible with the community had we known that it was going to be an incinerator. Our process, when we approve these zonings or major modifications, oftentimes can lead to things that we are not aware of. And as a consequence, the process of working through that project, we find ourselves in a situation where now we realize we've got a permit application that has a major environmental impact on the community. My question is, when we did the major modification back in November, was it very obvious that we were going to have an air incinerator, a heavy industrial use project in a residential area that is considered, has a zoning of R9 SMU. It's somewhat urban, somewhat rural, but it's certainly not agricultural at the level that would suggest that burning is okay. We have in agricultural communities the ability to burn, say, plastics and those kinds of things because it's seasonal. It's for a time. So it doesn't necessarily mean that this evaluation process is flawed. It may be that the permit application's there, but I still have some issues associated with the volume and the placement. So if the letter addresses the concern in the process that allows us to make a recommendation to adjust or to make changes in the way this is done, then that may be where we go. But my concern is that there may be a way to address this in the project approval as it's developed, because it clearly is the land use and the compatibility that's a question here that's caused this opportunity for the permit to be applied and then determined what the best solution would be. And I'm trying. That's why I'm saying, if we can't delegate or it would compromise our ability to delegate do the delegated responsibility we have, then is there another way to address this when it comes to the project approval?
Thank you.
Through land use.
Commissioner Kemp.
This is a very complicated conversation, and what I was trying to get at when I asked that is not about the delegation and the future of items to us as an EPC, although that's out there as, maybe some kind of consideration. I more didn't want to jeopardize our opportunity here in the future to have our greatest impact on this issue, possibly in other ways as we move forward by, I think there are risks involved in taking this vote today, even if you, are, and I think there's a lot of sentiment here around the board in terms of the things that Commissioner Hagan pointed out, that, there's a lot of opposition to this and concern for the community and not wanting to see this. But I'm concerned that taking this action in this way today may jeopardize our opportunity to stop this down the road or to impact this down the road. That's my concern. If I thought that this would be the best avenue of opposing this, but it's to me, just on this particular issue, not looking at any other issue, just looking at this, that there could be jeopardy, legal jeopardy here in terms of opportunity for the future on this issue. And I'm just wondering if, again, Mr. Marotti, also if Mr. Gormley, I don't know, if he is there, could give us some advice in terms of this. And I would just say to,
I would like for Rick Marotti to speak on that matter.
Thank you.
Yeah, again, Commissioner.
Mr. Marotti, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you very much. Rick Marotti, again, Legal Department. I was reminded by my co-counsel that if we take no action, they actually get a default permit. This is a state permitting process. We're on a 90-day clock to issue the permit, and if we don't issue anything on day 90, if we just stop working on it, they get a default permit, and that default permit would be worse than anything that we would try to ratchet down and condition tighter. So that's another danger of not doing anything. And again, well, that's the key thing. If we stop working, they get the permit, and it'll be a worse permit than the EPC could then put if we gave conditions. So there's another issue that I, again, greatly appreciate the community concern and the commissioner's motion, but we have to worry about our contractual obligations and the ramifications. If we take no action, they actually get the permit. That's under Chapter 120 of the Florida statutes, default permitting for minor sources of air pollution.
thank you for clarifying it, because it sounds to me then by taking this action today that we would be in a far worse position to totally oppose or to put any kind of limits on this if we took this action today. And so I can't support that no matter how strongly I feel about stopping this because we do have other bites at the apple, not only in conditioning, but also in other areas with regards to this. And so if we were to take this option today, I think we would lose those other, we would lose all of those other opportunities. It would almost be like giving the applicants a gift by saying this, you can do this totally, fully, and completely. If we, I know it doesn't sound like that, but that is what Mr. Marotti, I think, is telling us today, and that's my fear with moving forward in this way. This is not to say, too, and I'd also like to understand a little bit in terms of, you know, we statutorily, so this is not our local rules, and we're taken as surprised by all of this as anyone in the audience. We did not know about incinerator curtains. We did not know about the application till now. So we're just learning all of this now. And what, you know, moving forward, there are, we're just exploring now other options, other areas that we have to look at. But in terms of this, the rules governing this are not our local rules. This is statutory. It is state rules. And I'm also very concerned about state rules that might allow these to be placed in any areas within 10 miles, 50 miles of residence and where they live, of open air practice, of all kinds of things that we do not know about this and perhaps can have some impacts on those as well. So I just, while I appreciate the intent behind that, Commissioner Hagan, I'm really worried that we would just not give any opportunity to have the strongest legal position in terms of opposition or in terms of curtailing this. I want to be in the position to have the strongest opportunity for that, and I feel like this today wouldn't do that. We do have more time with this. It's extremely concerning, and I'd like to have both our county attorney's office as well as the EPC, looking at what all our options and opportunities are. And I fear that if we were to do this today, because of the posture, because of the way that this is administratively put forward, as Mr. Marati explained, that we would be putting ourselves in a far worse position in terms of doing the right thing by the community.
Thank you. And we do have commissioners in the queue to speak, but Ms. DeLue, I see you moving to say something.
I know from the county, I thought Adam Gormley also signed on for this meeting. If you have questions and if he wanted to address anything, I wanted to give him that opportunity.
Correct. And Commissioner Cohen, did you want to go ahead?
Actually, that's fine. I'd love to hear from Mr. Gormley right along the same line of questioning, because where I was going to go is exactly from where Commissioner Kemp just left off, which is, where is the strongest point in the process where we can exert ourselves? Mr. Sanford said earlier in his presentation that zoning considerations would not be taken into account in the EPC's review. So the first question, and probably is for Mr. Gormley, where are those considerations going to be taken account? When in the process is that going to happen? Because, look, there is no question we can read from the body language and the statements of everyone on the board. I think all 7 of us are going to do whatever we can to stop this and to work with the community that has come out in droves to tell us how they feel, and we're going to take our best shot at it. We need to make sure we take our best shot, though, and that if we're going to kill it, we have to kill it at the right moment. We can't kill it in a place where we can't be effective. So, Mr. Gormley, where in this process is the compatibility with residential uses going to be addressed?
Mr. Gormley?
Thank you. Adam Gormley, Development Services, Hillsborough County Development Services. So this site is subject of an existing land development zoning. The zoning does have uses that include residential development, as well as some limited uses that are allowed in the agricultural single-family 1 unit per acre zoning district. One of those uses described in there is a yard waste air curtain incinerator. So there is a recognition that some limited form of that use can be considered. There is a active site construction application for this site that is seeking to site an yard waste air curtain incinerator. There are several elements that we are looking at with that, and I think probably the most pivotal one is the level of emissions that the project would generate. If the level of emissions would reach a threshold that would characterize it as a heavy industrial use, the use would be prohibited in this location due to the future land use designation not allowing heavy industrial uses. There are other aspects of the project that we are looking at relative to the information that was provided in the rezoning application. We are aware of the project, we're aware of the concerns, and have been in coordination with EPC staff to ensure that we are working with the most current and accurate information. And that review is still pending at this time. It's early on in the application, and there have been numerous reviews that have required resubmittal on the project.
Mr. Gormley, Commissioner Hagan said earlier that customarily these uses are temporary and that they're not generally permanent, and that's what we've all been told. Is that, in your experience, when something like this is allowed, is it generally in contemplation of a temporary use?
The uses that are that are the area that the ag use is permitted also permits and contemplates future redevelopment as a residential use, integration of those residential units with the rest of the PD through internal roadway constructions. That gave us the indication that the ultimate intent of this was to develop it for residential uses as the plan allowed. However, we don't regularly see air curtain incinerators, but my understanding is that they are generally temporary or intermittent uses.
You know, I think that to Commissioner Kemp's earlier point, it's very important that we don't do something that prejudices our ability to actually affect this. And I actually have questions of whether or not Commissioner Hagan's motion even does, because it sounded to me from Mr. Marati as though I'm not sure they consider themselves empowered to follow the directive if we give it to them. But either way, I think, I don't think it's going to have the desired effect regardless of whether or not we take the action. I think that we need to have the rejection be grounded in an official act that we're empowered to take, or that our staff is.
Thank you. So, Mr. Gormley, aside from the EPC permit that is actually a state DEP permit, the county, under what, code enforcement then, is going to have another bite at the apple, as was said, and be able to decide whether or not they are permitted to have this use under their current zoning?
Commissioner, yeah, yes, in addition to the DEP permit, the site, the proposed development would be required to obtain a county approval as for a site construction plan for the project. So that is a requirement that is in place and must be obtained along with any associated building permits prior to any commencement of the use on the site, regardless of the status of any state permit.
Thank you. And so part of that county permitting, it would include an evaluation of what the emissions are likely to be, and if they are going to be greater than what is allowed in this AS1 zoning, which seems mighty likely, they will not be able to operate two of these air curtain incinerators without having light industrial or heavy industrial zoning. So they don't have the zoning. If that review turns out that they don't have the zoning to operate this, that will stop them. Whereas asking EPC to stop work would just generate a state permit, a default permit 90 days from now. And I want to raise another issue about the zoning. Their current zoning may have somewhere in fine print in the 436 pages of that report some allusion to an incinerator. But I reviewed the zoning hearing, and that's why I asked the Gerasi engineer this morning if he had said any of this stuff he's saying today at the zoning. I know he didn't, because we had several letters from the community. Several residents were writing in and showing up in support of the zoning, because what they were told and what this applicant told Development Services told us at the public hearings, showed a slide, and their land use attorney, Cammie Corbett from Hillward Henderson, read the slide to us that they were going to be having 198 or single-family homes, plus converting 25.5 acres of the land back to rural development, So we had all these letters, I've gone through them in the case file, from the residents, happy that this development was going to be better than what their previous zoning was, because Lennar Homes was going to build better homes than, and a better development than what was there. And these letters are all reiterating the promise that they were told that at 25.5 acres would be reverting back to agricultural. This is not reverting back to agricultural. This is moving into heavy industrial incineration, and by the way, their traffic expert testified as well. The usual traffic expert we're all familiar with, Mr. Henry of Links and Associates, testified that there would be a reduction in the traffic from this zoning because they were reducing the homes from 205 to 198. So there would be a reduction in traffic. Well, there's not going to be a reduction in traffic if you're going to have a parade of trucks carrying tons of yard waste to a commercial 24/7 incineration operation. That's not a reduction in traffic that was told to the community and told to development services. Please, we'll have to remove you. We'll have to remove you if you disrupt the meeting. I'm sorry. We are as upset as you are. I can tell you that. We are upset, and we will do whatever it takes to shut this down. But I'm just pointing out that I think there might be a case to be made that their current zoning was based on testimony and evidence that was put on the record that did not give anybody any reason to think they were approving this in that zoning, and that the residents were tricked, and that we should expect a more honest representation of what that zoning was. I think there are several places we will be able to attack this in the zoning, their current zoning, as well as the emissions and the zoning that would be required for a commercial project of this nature operating in this rural, beautiful community of Lutz. Hoping to be the most effective, let's consider that. Commissioner Hagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A few comments here. Although I've disagreed with a lot of what's been stated here today, I do believe that everyone here wants to do the right thing and prevent this intrusion from occurring. A couple points I want to remind everyone. Mr. Maradi and staff, they work for this board. They don't work for DEP. Let's start with that. Mr. Maradi's recommendation is not to act. I can understand that. I did not speak with Mr. Maradi, but I could have told you that was going to be his legal opinion. I disagree, but I respect his opinion. I strongly believe that we need to take strong action today. Let DEP know of our significant objections to this project. The challenge with a lot of what Commissioner Kemp and Commissioner Cohen said, the challenge is we do not have the luxury of time. You can look at the next step. This is a done deal. They're just checking the boxes. Okay? They're issuing the draft permit next week, 14 days, and then it's done. Okay, so let's understand that if we're talking about 6 months, a year, then I would agree with everything Commissioner Cohen said, everything Commissioner Kemp said. We have time. There'll be other avenues where we can stop this. That's BS. This is a train moving forward, and we're not going to be able to stop it. This is our only chance to do so. We need to send a strong message. I seriously doubt DEP is just going to thumb their noses, ignore our concerns, and just say, okay, well, we're just going to give the applicant whatever he wants in 90 days. I have a hard problem believing that. That being said, the residents clearly want us to take action today. I'm prepared to do so. I know it's a tough decision. I don't deny that. And I think at a minimum, it buys us more time to hopefully have this thing killed. But if not, this thing's done in a few weeks. Staff has said so. So that
I'm going to ask you to. Don't make us clear the room, please.
That is the inherent flaw with Commissioner Cohen and Commissioner Kemp's arguments. If we had the time, then I would agree with them, but we don't.
Commissioner White, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Hagan, you're spot on in your assessment. Commissioner Kemp, you're absolutely correct. This is a complex issue. So a couple of things. First, related to the motion on the floor, I will support Commissioner Hagan's motion. I think that if the motion passes, we should just send it back to DEP saying that the board intervened and said no, and let the Secretary of the DEP do as they please. Secondly, I'm disturbed, as Commissioner Hagan has pointed out, this board is at the top of the organizational chart for EPC. I'm disturbed that we have entered into, as I've heard, 15 agreements with DEP and other agencies to have things delegated to this organization where the elected representatives have no say. So I'd like to see all 15 of those agreements analyzed and reworked such that there's an appeals process that involves this board. Now, state law may say that it ultimately still needs to go back to the state at some point, but this board should have a built-in process so that we can weigh in at some appropriate point in time. Now, getting back to Commissioner Kemp's issue about what a complex issue this is, Mr. Gormley, I'm going to ask you a question. We are sitting today with our EPC hats on. We're sitting as the EPC, not as the Board of County Commissioners. My question for you is, if we were today in an EPC meeting, understanding that the issue is germane to the agenda item that's on our EPC agenda, if we were to make a motion today to instruct you to consider a publicly initiated rezoning based upon the health, safety, and welfare concerns that we've heard today, would that be legally sufficient for you and your staff to begin looking at that? And secondly, would that be sufficient to trigger a zoning in progress?
So, commissioners, if that motion were to be made, we would certainly pursue and look at that. Whether the board sitting as the EPC, I would say that a motion of that sort from the county administration or BOCC side would be best. We'll certainly explore it wherever the direction comes. I think for having an effective force behind that motion, the best position would be that motion be made by the BOCC sitting as the BOCC.
And I'd like to, Rick Marotti with Hillsborough, obviously I would second that, or I concur with that statement by Mr. Gormley. We don't want you to be crossing from BOCC to EPC. I think informational guidance to them, but if you need a full vote of the BOCC, it should be scheduled at BOCC just to be safe.
Mr. Gormley?
Yes, sir.
What if I were to, this would be after Commissioner Hagan's motion on the floor is disposed of. What if I were to make a motion asking for a straw poll on whether or not a publicly initiated rezoning is in order? Is that something you'd be willing to start on the staff level?
Commissioner, we could come back to the BOCC with some information on that, regardless of whether it was a actual vote or a straw vote of the EPC. Again, would take any action and comments made as a desire to have that information brought to the board, and we be ready, willing, and able to do so.
Let me ask Mr. Marotti a question. When is this potentially a done deal? Let's say Commissioner Hagan's motion doesn't pass, or it does pass, and our staff feels that they need to, to move forward, based on the agreement with DEP. At what point then would this be signed, sealed, and delivered?
Okay, and I think I may need Reggie's help on that, but one point of clarification, I hope I didn't mislead. We have 15 delegations, but not all of them say the commission wouldn't have a say. It's only about 2 or 3 where it's a straight state delegation.
Well, we need those two or three analyzed.
Yeah, and we'll clarify that with you. Okay, so regarding that point, once the EPC staff, acting on the DEP delegation, deem a project complete, like we have all the information we need, we're on a 90-day clock. And I'll defer to Mr. Sanford to let me know when that 90-day clock is, but it is rapidly approaching that we have to make a decision. It's very close. I think we're less than 2 weeks out of that 90 days.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Marotti. The 90th day, I believe, is either September 1st or September 2nd.
Okay. Well, listen, I'm going to support Commissioner Hagan's motion on the floor, but what I'm going to do in addition to that, I'm not going to make any additional motion, but Mr. Gormley, I'm just going to ask you today to schedule something next week at our land use meeting that would address the issue of a publicly initiated rezoning.
Yes, sir. We'll do.
And I'm going to ask you to do that on two grounds. One is with the questions of the record from the previous rezoning that Commissioner Smith has brought up, and also because of the issues of the health, safety, and welfare of the community that have been raised today.
Okay. And Commissioner Myers, recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know as board members we do not talk to each other, but Commissioner White, I did not read your mind and you did not read my mind, but I was lining out the questions that I was asking regarding the health and safety and the welfare and which you raised, and also to ask for zoning to come back and give us an update of how we can change this. This needs to be stopped now. There's no, hold on. It's okay, we're all together. We're all together. But to have the number of citizens here today, those who have signed up for the Tuesday's meeting, that tells us you all do not want this incinerator in your community. Not thinking of the health and safety of the citizens that are living there, it's like, it's okay. This should have been stopped earlier, because when developers come in and they change the zoning for something that we're told, then the question I ask staff for the future, how would we know? How would we know as a board? Because we never would have voted for this in the zoning in the first place, to put all the residents' lives at stake in that community.
Absolutely.
Never would have voted for it. So to me, I have to ask this question to staff. We have to have more information in what is going to be the future project in 3 to 5 years out, so we know how we are voting as a board. And so I'll leave it there. This last thing I would say, to burn for 5 years and ask for additional 5 years, no one wants to smell that odor. So this has to die of natural death today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Myers. And before we get into the double dipping commissioners in the queue, I'm going to take a turn and say, Commissioner Myers, you're reading my mind, because I think we do need to look at this process. Typically, our EPC reviews our zonings when we know that there's a wetland on the property, and we send it over for wetland review, and there's a really strong process there. But we have not been sending rezoning applications or looking or vetting whether or not there is this, and by we, I mean our development services staff and the whole zoning process, the zoning hearing master process has not been checking to see if there's this kind of incineration, and we should be also considering changing the process to send such things past EPC in the zoning application stage. And I've already talked to Mr. Gormley about that. As far as the motion on the floor, as I've heard this, and thank you to everybody for the good discussion of this, and thanks to Mr. Marotti and Adam Gormley for explaining this complicated process. But what I'm hearing is that DEP is going to issue a permit for this process, our state DEP, whether it goes through our local EPC or not, very soon. And if it goes through our local EPC, it's going according to state process. They could possibly put a little bit more teeth in it, but I think our real, as we've kind of sussed out today, our real weapons to kill this, which is very clear, we are all with the community and we want to do, is going to be in the zoning and county permitting. So because of that, I'm going to support the motion, because that we do need to tell DEP that this permit that's coming through them by hook or by crook is not coming with our blessing. We have strong objections. I agree with Commissioner Hagan that if they get such a unique and unprecedented message from us, that they will think carefully about issuing any default permit. But even if they don't, I think we've done what we've fired our shot across the bow. And if I also agree with Commissioner Hagan that if it lands us in court, it lands us in court. There are certain things worth fighting for, and yes, you have seen me stand up for such things, as well as Commissioner Kemp, and that's why we have a whole legal department full of attorneys. And by the way, we've been winning. We have been winning those land use decisions that have gone to court, and so you know, I'm strongly behind this motion. And from there, we'll start taking the round two, but hoping to land the plane. Commissioner Cohen.
So let me just get back to something for a minute about the motion, because I would like to be for the motion. The concern that was raised by our legal counsel is that if we ask DEP to stop work on the permit, that after the 90 days, it's going to automatically trigger it anyway. I understood, though, as the conversation progressed, and I think, Commissioner Hagan, you said this, that it sounds as though the permit's going to be issued one way or the other, that this checks all the boxes, and therefore it's not really this isn't really a risk to have it one way, to have it issued automatically, because we're already too far down that road. Is that what you're basically arguing?
Well, it is, but I think it's important that we send a strong sign and signal that this board is opposed to it, and maybe with a little luck and a little prayer, DEP will reconsider moving forward on this. So, but I don't want this passing under my watch and under my approval, and me just sitting here and saying, okay, well, we have no choice in the matter. I want to be very vocal and very outspoken and do everything we can to send that sign and signal. This should not be here. And if DEP wants to make that call, let's force them to do that.
Well, if I thought there was a chance that this would get derailed some other way, I think I would stick to my original position. But the bottom line of the matter is that it doesn't matter if they issue it automatically, because we're going to fight this thing either way, is what you're basically saying. All right. Well, then I will go along with it as well. I hope I want everybody to know something. I hope this is the right strategy, because we want to kill it, and I want us to do it right, and that's why we're asking these questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Overman.
I'm going to support the motion for that very reason. And I would like to ask our process, based on Commissioner White's recommendation and our conversation with Mr. Gormley, is that we bring back the issues associated with the fact that the zoning application was not actually, it doesn't give EPC good guidance on whether or not this would be appropriate in the location for approval in the first place, right? I mean, if it were very clear that this was going to be a heavy industrial use, which is basically what this is, EPC would be having a different conversation. The permit was for what was applied for, not what was presented in the land use zoning, which is why it is critically important, given our timeline, so that EPC can consider what the actual zoning should be, that we get this on the agenda for Thursday's land use meeting. So I want to know, I'll bring it up after this motion is addressed, but I want to have a motion to actually approve getting that on the agenda for Thursday's land use meeting, which actually I wasn't going to be at. But is that your motion? I didn't hear it as a motion. That's why I was asking.
He's going to do that after
Okay.
this is disposed of.
Okay, great. That's what I want, is
Okay.
to make sure that happens.
Commissioner Kent, you're recognized.
And you can all hear the sentiments of everyone at this board, and we're with you. But I really, really, really didn't want to jeopardize an opportunity. If we had one that was different, I thought we really need to figure this out in this forum. As I said, we were just hit with this like you were as a board, and terribly shocked by it, and have only learned what these things even are or do. I think clearly the applicant, the Geracis, exploited a loophole to the extent that they were able to bring this forward, and it ticks a lot of boxes that we have. And I can tell you that we have worked really hard in turning around a lot of that was in our land development code and everywhere else over the last 4 years as the board has turned. I've been kind of shocked by, as these conditions come up and allow this kind of case to happen. This is the most egregious case I've ever seen coming forward in the 6 years that I've been on this board. But there's been a lot of really poor public policy, poor land use planning, a lot of throwing down of infrastructure without a lot of throwing down of development without infrastructure in place. A lot of big things to change that let this go. This is something that none of us would have anticipated or seen, but there are those people out there that look for these kinds of opportunities to exploit us all. So with that, I just really wanted to make sure I wasn't voting to hurt our opportunity to stop this by moving forward on this, and wanted to be clear about that. So I will be joining as well, and we'll be doing, as we move forward, as every single member of the board has stated, everything possible to stop this.
Thank you. Ms. DeLue, did you have something?
Before the vote, I would like Mr. Marotti to just clarify exactly what difference it would make as far as what conditions we could put on as ourselves, as opposed to just being rubber stamped and approved by DEP.
Thank you. Mr. Marotti, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. I wanted to clarify, Rick Marotti, Legal Department. So clarify, the EPC is, the staff is, issuing it on behalf of the DEP. It's the DEP isn't issuing it, but we just mentioned it to show that, that we're working under the delegation, but even if by default, it doesn't mean that the DEP takes the process over. It just means that come day 90, if we take no action, the applicant gets a permit with the looser conditions, as opposed to if we issue one, assuming they even qualify, if we issue one, we'll have much tighter conditions on managing throughput, managing hours. If we don't put conditions in there, they get longer hours to burn by default. So I just want to make sure you understood that it's not that the DEP takes the case over, it just administratively issues with even looser conditions. And Reggie may be able to add to that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Sanford?
Yes, I think Mr. Marati kind of summed it up. We have delegation agreements for a lot of processes outside of this. It would be my concern. I mean, they submitted a new application or an amended application. We don't know what's in that application. It's my understanding if we take no action, then what they have in that application becomes the permit in which they operate. The problem is, as Ms. Morales pointed out, that slide I showed you with the considerations on the amounts, on the hours, when they need to set the fire out, whether they could work on, operate 7 days a week or take a more restricted 5-day a week, distances to wetlands and structures. Some of these things that we're in the process of negotiating would not necessarily come into fruition, pending what's in that application. So, I think the benefit, and I'm not trying to sway on one side or the other, but the benefit of us, reviewing and ultimately working out conditions is probably for the betterment of the residents, because if they meet the state requirements, they'll get their permission, but it's to what extent? Would it be to the extent of whatever they have listed in that new application? Or would it be to the extent of maybe some conditions that we could, work in place to make for a cleaner, facility? So just want you to, keep that in mind if the commission decides to, let the application, I guess, be approved through some type of default mechanism.
Thank you. And I hear you. And listen, I appreciate the value of the EPC's specific views on these delegated authorities. And I think we'll learn a lot about that soon. It is a benefit, and we often do get much better permitting this way. In this case, I don't want to see this permitted at all. I don't want to see it permitted with one condition or another condition, or better conditions or worse conditions. So I really think extreme action is called for, because whether they get this, if they were to get a permit with some conditions or no conditions, we're still going to fight having it at all. Commissioner Hagan, you recognize.
Thank you. I'm going to be real brief. First of all, I just want to thank the board for all of your comments. Factually, I think we all agree this should be a slam dunk, but process-wise, it's very challenging. I recognize that, and I sincerely appreciate all of your comments. Commissioner White, I love the idea of attacking this on the land use front. Hope you make a motion and we can move forward with that as well. And lastly, just want to thank the residents for all of your comments coming down here, all of your emails. Please continue to stay vigilant. I know you will, we will, and working together, hopefully we can get this thing killed. So thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I know you're in the queue for later, so seeing no further discussion, we'll take a vote on the motion by Commissioner Hagan, second by Commissioner Myers.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to Commissioner White's ideas about how to attack this on the land use front.
So, Mr. Gormley, I have been asked to make this in the form of a motion to direct you to bring this back to next week's land use meeting, which I think we're on safe ground there because we're not taking any sort of action. We're just simply asking you to bring us something next week when we are properly convened as the BOCC in a properly noticed meeting. Before I make my motion, though, Mr. Gormley, I'd like for you to explain 3 things to our audience here. I've asked you about a publicly initiated rezoning. So I'd like for you to explain to the audience what a publicly initiated rezoning is. Secondly, how that process would begin moving. And then the final thing is I mentioned zoning in progress, which is a legal term of art. So I'd like for you to explain to the audience what that would mean as well. So if you'll explain those 3 things, then I'll make my motion.
Yeah, so Commissioners, board members, the concept of publicly initiated rezoning, there are 2 ways that a rezoning of a property is initiated. One is either through an applicant request, but the other is through a action initiated by governmental entity, the county in this case. That direction can be given by the board, and there is the process is a little bit different in terms of public hearings, but it is a process that allows for a zoning modification to be initiated by a governmental entity other than as opposed to the property owner. The process for a county-initiated rezoning would run much the same as a regular rezoning. Property owner-initiated rezoning. It would, in our case, go to a zoning hearing master for an initial public hearing, and then would ultimately be considered by the Board of County Commissioners also in a public hearing, which is a little different than the format that we have for non-publicly initiated. The concept of zoning in progress is a concept where once a intent to change a zoning regulation or zoning requirements have been publicly initiated and put into motion, that there would be that action would need to be recognized in future development requests. I'll stop there. There are some facts I think that may be may need to consider on the particular facts that here, but that's generally the concept for zoning in progress.
Okay, so I'll move that we direct Mr. Gormley to bring to the board next week at our land use meeting an item that would make a recommendation to this board as to whether or not the county should pursue a publicly initiated rezoning, and B, to recommend to the board whether or not our staff should declare zoning in progress.
Second.
Was you second? Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we've got a motion by Commissioner White, second by Commissioner Overman. Please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. And that concludes that item, and we've deferred the last 2 items. Is there discussion of any future items? Okay, now we did have some public comment that didn't get to be made. We're going to be losing some of the board members who have commitments. This meeting has gone about an hour and a half longer than our usual meetings. But if there is anyone still here who was signed up for public comment, we can take another 20 minutes of public comment. 15? 20 minutes, okay. So is staff ready to consider, well, is there anybody else left hanging virtually? One moment. Anybody else left who's been waiting for like 2 hours on the virtual connection?
Madam Chair, we do have people virtually.
All right, then I'm going to go through the list and go through the order as people signed up. So Ken Smith. Is there a Ken Smith?
Ken Smith did not join the meeting.
Amanda Grayson.
Amanda did not as well.
Brian Edwards.
Brian Edwards is not on the call.
James Costello.
James, are you still on the line? James has signed off.
Kirsten Woodruff. Miss Woodruff, thank you, and thank you for waiting so patiently. Thank you so much. You've got 2 minutes.
So I'm with Woodruff Law, and the Hillsborough County EPC is governed by the Enabling Act. It's on your website. The Enabling, oh, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm with Woodruff Law. The Hillsborough County EPC is governed by the Enabling Act. Section 16 of the Enabling Act says no person shall permit a nuisance. That is, no person, anybody, including this board, nobody can permit a nuisance. The contract, which the EPC has with the state of Florida, page 2, section 3, clearly states that the foundation for EPC's power is based on the Enabling Act, and the Enabling Act in its entirety is incorporated into the contract with all of EPC's work with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, which means any work that this EPC does must take into account section 16 of the Enabling Act, which says no public nuisance, no permitting of a nuisance. That is part of the contract. So yes, this board is not a rubber stamp. This board has the power to look and see, okay, is this a nuisance? And the case law clearly states, and I have Florida Supreme Court law that I sent to Commissioner Hagan, who I love, stating that you must look at the neighborhood where a business is going to go. That is critical in determining whether or not this is a nuisance. This business that Garachis are trying to do, it would be nothing but a nuisance. Thank you so much for your help. And also, if you can just deny it, I don't know if that might help, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Woodruff. Lauren Fopp was virtual.
Lauren did not sign on virtually.
I actually have her written statement if you'd like it, so.
You have the...
I have a written statement from her if you'd like me to hand that in.
Madam Chair, if I may, I believe you'll give it to these gentlemen right here, to your right.
Thank you. Good idea. Yeah, don't want to start something that's outside of the process. And David Tillery, virtual.
I'm right here.
Oh, there you are. I didn't see you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate this opportunity. I'm David Tillery, candidate for Florida House District 66, which is Lutz, as part of that, which is why I'm here. There are some things that might not have been discussed. Some things, obviously, the driving down of property values, but the fear of the precedent, if this goes through, that is a lot with the Lutz residents. Their fear that if this goes through, other businesses such as this will be able to use this as a precedent to do the same exact thing to expand this kind of operation. A lot of people don't know about these air incinerators is that over time, the internal core, due to the heat that is produced, degrades the entire unit, which is why I assume that it's only a temporary issue when they're made, because over time, they degrade and they are less efficient. And right now, as it stands, they're hoping to produce 60 tons a day. That's what 22,000 amounts to, and that's a serious problem. This will also, if this goes through, cause a financial distress on the entire healthcare industry for all the residents of Lutz that have to take their kids and their families for their problems due to cancer, leukemia, and other problems. And then also down the road, this company that wants to start this here in this residence risks a serious class action lawsuit from the entire residents of Lutz and those people affected by their pollution causing health issues to the residents, including their children. This is a great solution for Big Sugar. If they put this in, instead of doing open airfield burnings for their products, it would cause a perfect solution, but not here.
Thank you, Mr. Tillery.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience. And Jenna Palladino is next. Good afternoon.
Hi. Everything's been said that was on my talking points. However, I would like for you to instruct us as to what we can do next. We have thousands on our Facebook page. We have 600 already on the next meeting site. Please direct us when you're done with public testimony, who we need to call, what we need to do, and if we need to come next Thursday for the land use meeting, we'll be there. We'll bring all 600. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll be in touch. And I know, as I know you will as well, be in touch with our offices and we can stay together on this. Steve Hess.
Thank you. Obviously, a lot's already been said, and we appreciate what you've done. I'd like to thank you for meeting your fiduciary responsibility to the residents, as well as your moral obligation to protect us from this. Furthermore, I would like you to bear in mind, going forward, the dishonest and duplicitous nature of this developer. Clearly, they are not someone that can be trusted, and I hope you bear that in mind anytime an application comes before you from this group. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. Leanne Sokol signed up for virtual. Leanne Sokol.
Leanne has not signed in, but James Costello did sign back into the meeting.
I'm sorry?
Leanne did not sign into the meeting, but James Costello, who you called earlier, did just sign in.
Oh, okay, yes, thank you. Let's have James Costello, who we missed.
Good morning. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you. My name is Dr. James Costello. I'm a professor at Moffitt Cancer Center and a professor at University of South Florida. And I'm also a resident here in the Lutz area. I live about a half a mile from where this proposed incinerator would be constructed. I'm also father to 3 little girls who would also be living in this area. What's most concerning to me is all of the emission out products which would be produced by this incinerator, most notably such things as the volatile organic compounds, but other things such as the nitrogen oxides and the sulfur oxides. If you just take for the discussion point of right now the nitrogen oxide, it's proposed that it would generate about 50 tons per year. If you look at the World Health Organization's consortium report back in 2005, they were able to identify and establish that there was a causal relationship between nitrogen oxide emissions and lung cancer. And that occurred when a threshold level exceeded 10 micrograms per meter cubed of exposure levels. If you look at the amount of nitrogen oxide that this incinerator plans to produce at 50 tons, that would come out to about 0.4 micrograms per meter cubed if you use a dispersion model based upon other air incinerators which have been constructed in other states, which means that at 0.4 micrograms per meter cubed, if you extend that over a 25-year period of time, you would hit the threshold of 10 micrograms per meter cubed, which the World Health Organization has designated as a threshold marker for a causal relationship between exposure to nitrogen oxide emissions and lung cancer. In particular, it would expose patients to an increased risk of adenocarcinoma of the lung and squamous cell carcinoma of the lung. In addition, if you look further at emissions related to nitrogen oxide, it also results in a chronic inflammatory response within the lungs, which leads to the development of chronic interstitial lung disease.
Thank you, Mr. Costello. And excellent points. You feel free to write those down and send them to us by email as well. Heidi Taylor, virtual.
Heidi Taylor did not sign into the meeting.
Kirsten Woodruff, we had already. Yeah, right, okay. And Graciela Patino. And
Graciela did not sign in.
Molly Snee.
Molly did not as well.
Ekanth Malati.
Ethan Malati is not in the meeting.
Kevin Ambler, in person. Mr. Ambler, welcome. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me here on behalf of our neighborhoods and our neighbors. I'm a former state representative for 8 years of this area, so I've been listening to constituents for a long time, a resident for 36 years. I just want to say there's no sense preaching to the choir. This group has done a great job this morning at listening to our concerns. So thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Hagan, for your motion and for all of you for supporting it. The only thing I would ask is that in consideration of the comment that was made about the enabling legislation, you might, as a group, before you adjourn, want to consider passing a motion declaring that based on all the public testimony and other evidence that's been presented today, that this project appears to be a public nuisance, and therefore you're rejecting the permit on that basis. It might give the lawyer something to chew on, some teeth to put into the earlier motion about not wanting action, because it's a violative of your enabling act. So that's just a thought. I want to just conclude by saying, and coming back to Commissioner White's comment, he said, Lord, help us in making decisions about clean, healthy, safe environment. You did say that, and I think all of you did that today, and you heard your community speak out. This is a dangerous and absolutely offensive and outrageous project, and I think we all recognize that. You said open your minds, you did, and that's because you heard our voices, so your ears and eyes were open to the hazards that this project will bring as a pollution factory. So thank you again, commissioners, and we hope that the plan of attack for killing this project remains in full force and effect.
Thank you. And we will be considering some of these points in the letter that we craft to go to the state DEP about this. Kirsten Ate
Kristen
was
is
virtual.
not in the meeting.
Paul Grossman was in person.
I'll defer my time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Grossman. Leslie Babich, virtual.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Good afternoon.
Hey, okay. Good afternoon. I just want to thank you, Commissioner, and ladies and gentlemen of the EPC. My name is Leslie Babich, and I'm a resident of Luce. I live less than 1 mile from the facility. And I know we've got a lot of points in terms of the adverse health effects, and I do want to share that I'm retired military, and like Mr. Groh and Captain Sawhill, I've had the opportunity to deploy to several locations where our living and working facilities were located in close proximity to burn pits and incinerators. And we've seen firsthand the negative impact that this can have on the service members that we're serving overseas. In addition to the adverse health facts, I wanted to point out the Florida Department of Environmental Protection regulation on open burning, which does cover activities such as pile burning, prescribed fire burning, and burning using an air curtain incinerator. In all cases of residential burning, the debris to be burned must have been generated on the same premises as where it's being burned. Clearly, the permit for the ACI is requiring operations 24/7, 365, which is way outside the expected debris that would be burned for a local burn. In extremist situations, such as after tropical storms, the burning is able to be conducted under the authority of a municipal or county government and at a designated disaster debris management site. They will allow ACIs, however, in every situation such as this, it has been allowed for a short duration and for that specific purpose. So I don't think that this request to have a permanent ACI in a residential area obviously is a great solution. And we should be able to find somewhere else to locate this capability if, in fact, there is a need and a demand signal for this type of incineration. In addition to...
Thank you. I'm sorry, your time is up. Thank you very much. Is there an Albert Frater available virtually?
Albert left the meeting.
Judy Battles was in person. Welcome, Ms. Battles, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much. I'm revising my remarks because of your action here today. You have shown courage. You have shown that you are not willing to pass the buck and say, oh, we just can't do anything. So I appreciate that. I live on Saddleback Lake in Lutz, in the Crenshaw Lakes edition, or Crenshaw Lakes area, and have my family cleared the land in the early 50s. So I speak with great gratitude today. And Madam Chair, I have already sent a printed statement. You should have that. And fortunately, you answered my last question. Do whatever it takes to stop it now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Douglas Ibarra, trying to get as many people in the last 5 minutes that we have. Thank you for waiting.
No problem. Thank you, Vice Chair. Again, at this late stage, a lot of the questions have already been answered and taken care of. And I want to tip my hats off to Commissioner Hagan for leading the right battle. I'm going to kind of go off the cuff here and basically say that as a 25-year businessman and dealing with businesses and having had my legal battles over 25 years, the only way you deal with people like the Gerasis is you have to know how to fight them. And you can't let these type of unscrupulous business people take advantage of you. And basically, this is the history behind the Gerasis is so evident, starting when they got the land of Lutz, and within a few years, 3 Hillsborough County officials and a lawyer went to jail, and they had to testify for bribery charges from rezoning issues in Lutz. Of course, no charges were filed by them. It'd be interesting to find out how they got away with that. And then, of course, I'm sure this county knows that the Gerasis have been suing Hillsborough County, the taxpayers here, for 10, 15 years in federal court because they didn't get their way with their mega mall in the 90s. They should be thanking you. If they had that mega mall in Lutz, it would be like the same one in USF, a big empty crater. So the truth is, you're doing the right thing. You have to fight individuals like this. You have to be careful. You have to think out of the box. In the future, that's how you have to deal with it. So, for example, they're on agricultural land. I'm not sure understand why. All the buzzwords have already been there. Temporary. I mean, you got to start thinking outside the box. Temporary. If you have to give them 1 hour a week of burning on a Friday from 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock or whatever time you want, think outside the box when you deal with these type of business people.
Your time is up. Thank you very much. Is there Mark Haddad, virtual? Oh, hello. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I revised my statement given what's occurred. I concur with the gentleman that just spoke. You've got to be very clever. They were very clever getting this in the zoning. You have a land use meeting coming up. Know well that the Crystal River Road connects from 41 to Del Maybury. They have to bring the debris in. You can restrict that ability. Double axle trailers may be restricted, except maybe for movers. There's a lot of ways that you can be more clever than these clowns. They're snakes, you know that. Kill a snake. Don't wait for the committees to kill the snake.
Thank you. And we have time for one more speaker. Is Bhavana Patel available?
Madam Chair, we don't have Bhavana on, but there is a Frank Haas-letter on from earlier.
Okay, we skipped him, you're saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, let's hear him.
Frank, can you hear us?
Hello, my name is... Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. You've got 2 minutes.
I'll keep this very, very brief. I appreciate the commissioners in opposing this incinerator, and I oppose it also. Thank you for your time.
Well, that was very, very brief indeed, and thank you. We have time for if there's 2 people who are in person. Did Greg Quintana stay here? We'll hear from you and Delbert Snyder, and call it a day.
Hi. I'm currently the president of the Cheval Properties Association. Everything that I had written down has pretty much been answered. I would just really like to thank, on behalf of the community, Commissioner Hagan's willingness to listen and responsiveness to our concerns. And thank you all for not putting me in a position where I'd get tarred and feathered by the residents when I got home today.
Thank you. And our last speaker, Mr. Delbert Snyder. Thank you for sticking it out with us today.
No problem. Thank you for having me today. Just want to start out and say I grew up in Lutz. Been there. I went to high school, junior high school. I went in the Navy from there. Served 11 years. On this ship here I wore the hat for, they put me on a ship's rehab. And then when I got out, they told me, oh, later you'll have to start getting your lungs x-rayed because we forgot to tell you about respirators. In the early 80s, they didn't know about that. So, but I came back to Lutz to raise my kids. I did that. I owned a company for 20 years. And now my kids are raising my grandkids there. They come play in my backyard. I live about, 4/10 of a mile from Idlewild Baptist Church. Some of us up there just call it Six Flags Over Jesus. They're all together, and that's all great. But there's people there. I have grandchildren there running around playing in my backyard. I worked my whole life to get to this point. I don't want to have to leave. And I want my grandchildren to be able to grow up safely, same place I did, same place my kids did. Commissioner Hagan, I appreciate you coming out and taking care of that. And thank you all for supporting him. And don't give up the fight. And I assure you the people in Lutz will not give up.
Mr. Snyder, you've been our last speaker, and I hope you feel that your time was well spent. Your remarks are well taken. Thank you. And with that, I'll just tell anybody else who didn't get a chance to speak. Actually, we went through most of our speakers today, and but anybody who didn't get a chance, just stay engaged, and we will continue working on this together. With that, seeing no further discussion, we're adjourned.